My discovery shook me to the core. My husband was having an affair. Luxury brand gifts were being showered upon his mistress, all paid for with my credit card. For the sake of our son, I endured silently, but the weight became unbearable. I knew I had to take action. Unexpectedly, the person who came to my aid was the last one I imagined. I am Alexa, 35 years old, married to Austin for a decade. Our son Drake turned 8 this year. With a passion for writing, I turned novelist, fulfilling the lifelong dream. My debut mystery novel found success, leading to regular serialization and a busy schedule. Initially, Austin worked, but he quit when my writing became profitable. For the past few years, he spent his days idly, occasionally gambling. So when he dressed in a suit one day, claiming a job interview, I sensed something awry. "Why the suit?" I asked, catching him off guard. He hesitated before saying, "I have an interview." "For what?" "A job," he replied, a bit too quickly. Wishing him luck, I let him go, believing in his intention to change for our family's future. Yet when he returned at 1 a.m., reeking of alcohol and perfume, asleep on the sofa with his unlocked phone in hand, my curiosity overwhelmed me. I couldn't resist the urge to peek into my husband's smartphone. What's this?" I couldn't believe my eyes. It was undeniable. My husband was cheating. Even more shocking was his affair with my close friend, Ashley. They had been to a luxurious restaurant known for its stunning night views. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. No way. Austin and Ashley. Why? Ashley had a husband too. I had trusted them both. Confronted with this unexpected truth, tears welled up uncontrollably. I tried to stifle my sobs, not wanting to wake Austin. But I needed evidence. Quietly, I transferred proof of the affair to my own phone, unsure of what to do next. The next morning, Austin acted as if nothing had happened. "Hey, Austin, about yesterday," I began cautiously. "Yesterday," he replied casually. "You mean when I said I had an interview but came home late?" I couldn't help but wonder what had really happened. My husband averted his eyes as if searching for an excuse. "Well, actually, I ran into a friend after the interview, so we ended up grabbing a drink." "A friend? Who?" "Someone you don't know. I don't have to explain everything, do I?" "Yeah, you're right." As expected, my husband concealed his meeting with Ashley. His demeanor made it clear he was having an affair. 1 month after discovering his infidelity, I remained uncertain of my next steps. I hadn't confronted him yet. I couldn't bring myself to. If I did, I knew it would spell the end of our marriage. If it were just me, I would have presented the evidence and filed for divorce immediately. But I couldn't bear to take Drake's father away from him. He was only 8 years old. During my confinement to our room, working away, Austin began going out more frequently. Yet this gave me a chance. I resolved to gather evidence of his affair while he was out. Searching through his belongings, I found several unfamiliar receipts. Apparently, he had purchased luxury items for women. But of course, those items were nowhere to be found in our room. I hadn't received those gifts from him either. There was only one explanation. Austin was giving Ashley those branded items. But where was he getting the money for that? He had been unemployed for some time, relying solely on the allowance I gave him each month. He shouldn't have had any savings left. Curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to confront my husband. In the meantime, I called my brother over and asked him to look after my son. Of course, my brother was unaware of Austin's affair, so I fabricated a reason. "Sorry for calling you over so suddenly." "No problem, but what's going on? You said you need me to look after Drake." "Well, actually, there's something I really need to shop for alone." "Shopping? You're not usually so materialistic. You usually shop online." "I know, but today I need to buy something that's only available in store. Can you watch Drake for me?" "Sure, but don't be too late. Drake will miss you." "Thanks, I'll be quick." With my brother's help, I managed to tail Austin. Soon enough, I caught him walking arm in arm with my best friend, Ashley. Witnessing it firsthand was a shock despite my suspicions. They entered a luxury brand store together, and then I saw something unbelievable. "No way, are you kidding me? That's my credit card." Indeed, the card my husband was using to pay for their shopping spree belonged to me, a secondary card I often use. Normally, I kept my main credit card in my wallet, but the secondary card had been left in my drawer. Without my permission, my husband had taken it to pay for Ashley's gifts. Over the past few months, I had made significant purchases for work, monitors, keyboards, even furniture, using that card. The accumulated expenses were substantial. Both cards shared the same bank account, and with my hectic schedule, I hadn't checked the card details recently. It had come back to haunt me. I couldn't believe it. Not only was he cheating, but he was also using my money without my knowledge. My love for him evaporated instantly. I blamed myself for not paying closer attention, but even so, forgiveness was out of the question. I gathered ample evidence, snapping countless photos of them together, before returning home in a daze. For the next few days, I obsessed over ways to retaliate against my husband. Whenever he was out, I meticulously combed through his PC. His smartphone and PC were since, making it easy to scrutinize his exchanges with Ashley. Eventually, I discovered they were planning a trip during the upcoming holidays, a 4-day getaway. This is my chance, I thought grimly. I decided to exact my revenge during the same time as my husband's affair trip. However, there was one major obstacle: our son. Completing my revenge plan without Drake finding out about his father's affair would be challenging. So, once again, I turned to my brother for help. I hate to ask, but could you look after Drake during the upcoming holidays? The holidays? You mean all 4 days? Yes, I have something important to take care of. Something important, huh? My brother replied with a knowing tone. His words made me uneasy. Alexa, stop trying to handle everything on your own. What do you mean? Austin's cheating, isn't he? How did you? I heard it from Drake. What? Drake? My young son had somehow sensed his father's affair, despite his tender age. He might not have fully understood the situation, but he knew his father's closeness to someone other than me was hurting me deeply. I thought I was hiding it so well from Drake. Why? It means Austin's actions are hurting you enough for Drake to notice, my brother reasoned. Are you really going to stay with someone who hurts you like this? But if I divorce Austin, Drake will be devastated. Just then, as if on cue, Drake appeared from the next room. It's okay, Mom. I'm on your side. Drake, are you sure? I don't need anyone who makes Mom sad. As long as I have Mom, it's okay. Thank you, Drake, and thank you too, brother. With the support of my son and brother, I resolved to seek revenge on my husband without hesitation. On the day my husband planned to leave for his affair trip, Drake and I quietly packed our belongings. My brother assisted us covertly while my husband was away. The night before his departure, I decided to give him one last chance. Austin, what's with the suitcase? Why are you packing? Oh, this? I'm going on a trip with some friends starting tomorrow. A trip? You never mentioned that. It was a sudden plan. It's not a big deal. I'll cover it with my monthly allowance. My husband exuded an aura of don't talk to me, clearly avoiding further inquiry. But I was undeterred. In a tone rarely used, I confronted him softly yet firmly. Hey, are you sure it's just with your friends? He visibly panicked, his shoulders tensing. Still, he clung desperately to his lie. Of course, you've been quite persistent, haven't you? All right. I understand. Enjoy your trip with your friends. I was going to enjoy it even if you didn't tell me to. Just don't get too carried away, all right? With that, I left my husband's room. Honestly, if he had just told me the truth, I might have considered an amicable separation, seeking alimony and child support. Despite his betrayal, he was someone I once loved deeply. His support had sustained me during times when my novels didn't sell. I didn't want to harbor true hatred or resentment towards him, but given what had transpired, I couldn't afford to be lenient anymore. For the sake of my son and my own future, I had to bring an end to our relationship. There was no reason for me to hold back now, not after discovering his persistent lies. The next morning, my husband had already left for his trip. I opened the drawer and confirmed that he had taken my credit card as expected. Immediately, I contacted the bank, reported the card as lost, and requested it be deactivated. My son woke up and I greeted him with a cheerful good morning. Mom, it's today, right? Ha! The move. We're going to our new house today, right? Looking at my son's bright smile, any lingering anxiety inside me vanished. Oh, Drake, you're right. I've already stopped the credit card, so let's move to our new home. Yeah, I can't wait for our new place. With my brother's help, our move went smoothly. Our belongings, along with my son's, were settled in our new home, while my husband's things were sent elsewhere the next day. As I relaxed in our new home with my son and brother, my husband called. Hello. Oh, Alexa. What is it? Well, actually, this trip is costing more than I expected. Could you possibly transfer me some money? He was probably struggling to pay for things on his trip because I had frozen the credit card. His indirect request for money disgusted me. Didn't you say you were going within your own budget? Sorry, but I don't have any money to lend you. Oh, don't be like that. If you don't help me, I'll be the only one not enjoying the trip. You mean both of you, right? To that, my husband seemed dumbfounded. Ha! After all, you're on a trip. You want to show Ashley only the good parts, right? But sorry, the card you took is no longer valid. You'll have to manage on your own. What are you talking about, Alexa? In the card. Pretending not to know is pointless. You're panicking too much. Because you're saying nonsensical things. I don't know anything about a card. Enough. I already know you've been cheating on me with my best friend, Ashley. What? Did you really think I had no idea? Are you that dense? It's obvious. No, this isn't what you think. I'm not cheating. I was furious that my husband kept trying to make excuses. Not caring that my brother and son were next to me, I unleashed all the anger I had been holding back. Stop making excuses. You had a family and you had an affair with another woman. On top of that, using someone else's card. Do you realize how despicable your actions have been? Alexa, let's calm down for now. Huh? There's no way I can stay calm when I'm dealing with the person I hate the most in the world, don't you think? And just so you know, I have no intention of forgiving you or helping you. You and the woman you're with can go to hell for all I care. Never show your face to Drake and me again. Saying that, I hung up on my husband. Then his mistress, Ashley, called me. Hey Alexa, what the hell did you do? Ashley, long time no see. How's the trip with my husband? Shut up. Explain yourself. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. You sent Austin's belongings to my house, didn't you? Yes, indeed. When we moved, I sent my husband's belongings to Ashley. But Ashley is a married woman, so of course her husband is at home. That's exactly why I sent all of Austin's belongings to her house, including a long letter explaining everything. She screamed at me over the phone, her voice breaking. This isn't a joke. What did he do? My husband found out, and now he's furious. Well, it serves you right for having an affair while being married. You're supposed to be my friend. This is low. I misjudged you. Excuse me, that's my line. My best friend was having an affair with my husband, you know. How can I forgive that? Who was rude first, huh? I wasn't serious, it was just for fun. There's no way I'd settle for a jobless loser like him. I don't care whether you were serious or not. I'm about to get a divorce anyway. You did have an affair, and that's a fact. I will never forgive you. I will demand a lot of compensation, so brace yourself. Compensation? What's that? I didn't hear anything about that. Well, of course you did. What you deserve. Wait, I'm a housewife. I can't pay any compensation. I don't care. Either figure it out yourself or beg your husband. Well, I doubt that would work though. Oh wait, Alexa, hey, wait. Goodbye. I hung up without listening to her and blocked her number. Afterward, I finalized my divorce through my lawyer and demanded compensation from my ex-husband and Ashley. Alongside child support, I insisted on repayment for the credit card charges he made without my consent. Due to the debts from paying compensation, Ashley's husband demanded a divorce and she was kicked out of their home. She attempted to rely on her parents, but they turned her away given the circumstances. Now, she lives where she works and does night jobs at a bar. Austin tried to lean on Ashley, but she was furious because she had to divorce him. She promptly cut ties with my ex-husband, ending their relationship. Currently, my ex-husband works multiple part-time jobs and lives paycheck to paycheck. After being unemployed for so long, finding a stable job won't be easy for him. If he ever falls behind in alimony or child support payments, I intend to pursue him for the owed amount by any means necessary. As for me, I'm living peacefully in a new home with my son. His growth is remarkable, and every day is truly exciting. I aim to continue giving him lots of love, ensuring he never experiences sadness again.
I'm Emily, 35, and if you'd asked me a few years ago, I'd have told you my life was just about perfect. I was climbing the corporate ladder at a renowned company, making my way to a department manager position. It was during those long hours at work that I stumbled upon something unexpected, something that wasn't part of my meticulously planned career path. Love. His name was Jake, a colleague from a different department. He wasn't as high up on the career ladder as I was, but that never mattered to me. Our connection was instant, and before we knew it, our office romance blossomed into something deeper, leading us down the aisle. The company we worked for was supportive. After all, it wasn't a secret affair, but a serious relationship that everyone could see was genuine. We were happy, living in a beautiful, spacious house that we bought together. It was more than a home. It was a symbol of our future, of the family we dreamed of starting. But our seemingly perfect life wasn't without its cracks. The main issue? Our earnings. I always earned more than Jake, and while it never bothered me, it was a thorn in his side. One chilly evening, as we sat in our living room, Jake brought it up yet again. Does it ever get to you? The whole money thing? He asked, his gaze fixed on the dancing flames in the fireplace. No, Jake, it really doesn't. I love you, not your paycheck. We're in this together, remember? I replied, trying to reassure him. He let out a long sigh. I just feel like I should be the one bringing in more, you know? It's not traditional. I reached for his hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. We're not a traditional couple, Jake. We make our own rules. We're happy, aren't we? He nodded, but his eyes didn't mirror the conviction in his voice. The topic was a recurring one, resurfacing every now and then, each time leaving a faint but lingering unease in the air. Life has a way of throwing you off course when you least expect it. That's exactly what happened to me, Emily, on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday. It was supposed to be a routine medical checkup, nothing more. I sat there in the sterile doctor's office, fidgeting with the hem of my shirt, waiting for the usual all clear. Instead, what I got was a jolt that turned my world upside down. The doctor, a kind-faced woman in her 50s, had a serious look as she delivered the news. Emily, I'm sorry to tell you this, but you have cancer, she said gently. For a moment, everything stood still. The word cancer echoed in my head like a dreadful bell. Fear, disbelief, a sense of unreality washed over me. What? Are you sure? I managed to stammer, feeling my heart pounding in my chest. The doctor nodded, her expression empathetic. I understand this is a lot to take in. We need to discuss your treatment options. Her voice faded into the background as I grappled with the shock. Cancer? Me? It didn't make sense. I was healthy, or so I thought. When I left the doctor's office, I felt like I was in a daze. The world seemed to go on around me, but I was stuck in that moment of devastating revelation. I called Jake as soon as I could. He answered after a few rings. Hey Em, how did the checkup go? His voice was casual, expecting routine news. Jake, it's not good, I said, my voice shaky. What's wrong? Talk to me, Em, he replied, his tone shifting to concern. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. It's cancer, Jakey. I have cancer. There was a heavy silence on the other end. Then, oh God, Em, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? Where are you? I'm still at the clinic. I'm not okay, Jakey. I'm scared, I admitted, feeling a lump forming in my throat. I'll come right over. We'll face this together, Em. You're not alone, he said firmly. Hearing his words, a small flicker of hope ignited within me. Maybe, just maybe, we could get through this nightmare together. The following days were a blur of appointments, tests, and consultations. I started my treatment, which included chemotherapy. It was exhausting, both physically and emotionally. Jake was supportive at first, accompanying me to my sessions, holding my hand, trying to be strong for both of us. But as the treatments took a toll on me, I noticed a change in Jake. His visits became less frequent. His reassurances felt more forced. Whenever I asked him why he couldn't come, he always had the same excuse. Work is just crazy right now, Em. I'm so tired by the end of the day, he'd say over the phone. I tried to understand, to be sympathetic. After all, he was dealing with this in his own way, too. But deep down, I couldn't shake off the feeling of growing distance, the creeping sense of loneliness that started to envelop me. In those moments of solitude and struggle, I found an unexpected source of strength. My parents and my best friend, Lisa. They were my rocks, calling me daily, visiting me whenever they could, offering words of encouragement and love. While I was trying to adjust to my new reality in the hospital, undergoing treatment and dealing with the side effects, life outside continued. I missed our home, the comfort of our bed, the little rituals Jake and I had. Despite his decreasing visits, I clung to the hope that we were still a team. One day, Lisa came to visit. She brought some magazines, my favorite snacks, and a sense of normalcy that I craved. But there was something off about her. She seemed uneasy. "Hey, what's up? You seem a bit distracted," I said, trying to read her expression. Lisa hesitated before speaking. "Emily, I don't want to worry you, but something strange happened the other day." My heart skipped a beat. "What happened?" "Well, I was walking past your house, and I heard laughter. Loud, female laughter. It sounded like there was a party or something," she said cautiously. A cold shiver ran down my spine. "A party? But Jake didn't mention anything. Maybe he had friends over." Lisa bit her lip, looking uncomfortable. "I don't know, Emily. It just felt weird. And I haven't seen Jake around much lately. I'm worried there might be someone else." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I didn't want to believe it, but the seeds of doubt were planted. Was Jake seeing someone else while I was stuck here, fighting for my life? "I need to know, Lisa. I can't just sit here wondering," I said, a sense of urgency rising within me. "I understand. But what are you going to do?" Lisa asked, her concern evident. "I need to go home. I need to see for myself," I decided, my mind made up. "But Emily, your treatment—" "I know. But I can't ignore this." "I have to know the truth," I interrupted, feeling a mix of anger, betrayal, and fear. Lisa helped me arrange for an early discharge. The doctors weren't thrilled, but my recent results were promising, and they agreed under the condition that I would continue my treatment on an outpatient basis. The drive home was nerve-wracking. Every possible scenario played out in my mind. I was scared of what I might find, yet I needed answers. As we pulled up to the house, everything looked normal from the outside. But the moment we stepped in, it was clear something was off. The place felt different, like it wasn't ours anymore. We heard voices coming from the living room. My heart pounded in my chest as we walked in, bracing for what we might find. To my utter shock, there was a couple sitting there, looking as surprised to see us as we were to see them. "Who are you? What are you doing in my house?" I demanded, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and disbelief. The woman, probably in her late 30s, stood up. "I'm sorry, but who are you? We're renting this place." "Renting? This is my house. I live here with my husband, Jake," I said, struggling to process her words. The man, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "We've been here for a couple of weeks. We made a deal with Jake. He said the house was going to be sold, and we're interested in buying it." My world came crashing down at that moment. Not only was there another woman in my house, but now I was being told that my husband, the man I trusted, was planning to sell our home without my knowledge. I felt like I was in a nightmare, one that I couldn't wake up from. As I stood in the living room of what was once a symbol of our shared dreams, the couple who had unwittingly walked into this mess looked at me with a mix of confusion and pity. They introduced themselves as Mark and Sandra, clearly uncomfortable but trying to be polite. I could hardly focus on their words. My mind was in turmoil. "Please, can you call Jake? I need to speak to him," I said, my voice shaky but firm. Mark nodded, taking out his phone. "Of course, I have his number. He said to call if we needed anything." The wait for Jake to arrive was agonizing. My heart raced with a cocktail of emotions: anger, betrayal, disbelief. When he finally walked in, the look on his face was one of shock, but not the kind I expected. "Emily, what are you doing here? You should be in the hospital," he said, his voice tinged not with concern, but annoyance. His reaction only fueled my anger. "What am I doing here? Jake? What are you doing? Selling our house behind my back?" He had the audacity to look irritated. "I can explain, Emily. It's simple, really." "Explain? Explain how you could betray me like this?" My voice was rising despite my efforts to control it. Jake's expression hardened. "Listen, Emily, you're sick. The cancer might not even go away. I have to think about my life too. I can't be tied down, waiting for whatever comes next." I felt like I had been slapped. His words were cruel, unrecognizable from the man I thought I knew. "You're talking about selling our home, our life together, as if it's just a transaction. Is this really you, Jake?" Disbelief and hurt were evident in my voice. He shrugged, a cold look in his eyes. "It's practical, Emily. You're not going to make it, and I need the money to build my life. Besides, I would get this house anyway if you know." His words were like a knife twisting in my gut. The reality of his betrayal was worse than any suspicion I had harbored. "I can't believe you, Jake. After everything, this is what it comes down to. Money and convenience?" I was struggling to hold back tears. Jake seemed unfazed. "Life goes on, Emily. Yours might not, but mine will. I need to think about my future." His brazenness left me speechless. I had imagined many scenarios, but nothing could have prepared me for the callousness I was witnessing. "And you think you'll just get away with this? Selling our house? Leaving me with nothing while I'm fighting for my life?" My voice trembled with a mixture of rage and pain. He shrugged again, a gesture that now filled me with revulsion. "I'm doing what I have to. You can do whatever you want, Emily. It doesn't matter to me anymore." I felt a surge of resolve amidst the chaos of my emotions. "I'll fight you on this, Jake, and the company will hear about how you treat your sick wife. You won't get away with this," he scoffed. "Do what you want, Emily. I'm done here." With that, he turned and left, leaving a trail of coldness behind. I stood there, shaken to my core, realizing that the man I loved was a stranger to me now. I knew at that moment that this was a battle I had to fight, not just for my health, but for justice and dignity. After Jake left, a heavy silence filled the room. Mark and Sandra stood awkwardly, clearly wanting to escape the tense atmosphere. I couldn't blame them. "Look, I'm really sorry about all this. We had no idea," Mark said, sounding genuinely apologetic. "Yeah, we just wanted a place to stay. We didn't know about everything," Sandra added, her eyes full of sympathy. I gave them a weak smile. "It's not your fault. You were just looking for a home." They offered to leave, but I insisted they stay. It wasn't their fault that Jake had dragged them into his deceit. After they left, I sat down on the couch, my mind racing. I felt betrayed, angry, and helpless. But amidst all those emotions, a fiery determination was taking shape. I wasn't going to let Jake walk all over me. The next morning, I called my lawyer and explained everything. He was shocked, but promised to help me fight this. "Don't worry, Emily. We'll make sure he doesn't get away with this," he assured me. I felt a small glimmer of hope. With my lawyer's help, I would fight for what was rightfully mine. Next, I knew I had to confront Jake at work. It wasn't going to be easy, but I needed to face him. I wanted him to know that I wasn't going to back down. I arrived at the office, my heart pounding. As I walked through the halls, I could feel the eyes of my colleagues on me. They knew something was up. I knocked on Jake's office door and pushed it open without waiting for a response. Jake looked up, his face a mask of surprise and annoyance. "Emily, what are you doing here?" "I'm here to tell you that I know everything." "And I'm not going to let you get away with it," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Jake scoffed. "What are you going to do? You're sick, Emily. You should be resting, not causing a scene." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "I've spoken to my lawyer. We're going to fight you on the house, and I'm going to tell the bosses about what you've done." Jake's face hardened. "You think you can scare me? Go ahead, tell them, see if I care." I met his gaze squarely. "I'm not trying to scare you, Jake. I'm telling you what I'm going to do. You can't just throw me away because I'm sick." Jake leaned back in his chair, a smug look on his face. "You really think you can win this? I'm not the bad guy here, Emily. I'm just trying to move on with my life." I felt a surge of anger. By selling our home? By leaving me with nothing? Jake shrugged. "Life is tough, Emily. You should know that better than anyone." I shook my head, disgusted. "I can't even recognize you anymore, Jake. You're not the man I married." Jake's expression didn't change. "Maybe you never really knew me at all." With that, I turned and walked out of his office. I had said what I needed to say. Now it was time to fight. In the days that followed, my life turned into a whirlwind of paperwork, meetings, and strategy sessions. My health was improving, but my battle was far from over. With each passing day, I gathered more evidence to support my claim to the house. My larger financial contribution was a strong point in my favor, and I was determined to see this through. My lawyer was optimistic. "Emily, you have a solid case. The numbers don't lie. And given the circumstances, it's unlikely a judge will side with Jake," he assured me over the phone. The relief I felt was palpable. "Thank you," I replied. "I appreciate your help more than you know." "We're not there yet, but things are looking up," he cautioned. I understood. The legal world was unpredictable, but for the first time in a while, I felt like I was standing on solid ground. At work, the atmosphere was tense. My confrontation with Jake had become office gossip. Some colleagues whispered in corners, others offered quiet support. It was uncomfortable, but I couldn't let it distract me. I decided to meet with our bosses and lay everything out. It was a tough conversation, but necessary. I told them about Jake's betrayal, the house, everything. They listened, their faces a mixture of shock and empathy. "We're so sorry, Emily. This is unacceptable," one of them said. "The situation with Jake will be dealt with. This behavior can't be tolerated," the other added. Hearing their support was a relief. I didn't have to face Jake at work anymore. Days later, they called to tell me they had let Jake go. His actions didn't align with the company's values. It was a small victory, but it meant the world to me. My health was on the upswing, the treatments were working, and my doctors were hopeful. It was a glimmer of hope in a sea of chaos. One evening, as I sat in my small rental, contemplating my next steps, my phone rang. It was Jake. I hesitated but answered. "Emily, please, we need to talk." He sounded desperate. "What's there to talk about, Jake?" I asked, my voice firm. "I was wrong. I've been fired. I'm sorry, Emily. I didn't think it would come to this," he said, almost pleading. I took a deep breath. "You hurt me, Jake. Deeply. I can't just forget that." "I know, I regret it. Can we find a way to settle this without going to court?" he asked, sounding beaten. After a short pause, I replied, "I will not back down. Never." There was silence on the other end. "I understand. I'll have my lawyer contact yours," he finally said. Jake's call didn't change anything. He had shown his true colors, and there was no going back. I was a different person now, stronger and more determined. After the dust settled with the house and my divorce, I found myself standing at the beginning of a new chapter. It was a strange feeling, like stepping into the unknown after a long, turbulent journey. My health was improving, but the road to full recovery was still ahead of me. One afternoon, I was at the clinic for a checkup. The waiting room was quiet, just the hum of the air conditioner filling the space. When the nurse called my name, I followed her to the examination room. Dr. Simmons, my oncologist, greeted me with a warm smile. "Good to see you, Emily. How are you feeling?" "Better, thank you," I replied, taking a seat. "That's what we like to hear," he said, going over my chart. "Your latest scans show improvement. The treatment is working." I exhaled a sigh of relief. "That's great news." "Yes, but remember, it's a long road. You need to take care of yourself," he reminded me. "I know, and I will," I assured him. He nodded, satisfied. "Good. We'll keep monitoring your progress." Leaving the clinic, I felt a mix of emotions. Hope, certainly, but also a sense of responsibility. This was my life, and I had to take charge of it. Back at work, I threw myself into my projects. It was a distraction, but also a reminder that I had a purpose beyond my illness and personal troubles. One day, I was in the break room when I overheard a couple of colleagues talking. "Did you hear about Jake? He's trying to get his job back," one of them said. "Really? After what he did?" "Good luck with that," the other replied. I stayed silent, stirring my coffee. Jake's choices were his own. I had my path to follow, and it didn't include him. After work, I met up with my friend Sarah for dinner. She had been a rock throughout everything. "How are you holding up?" she asked as we sat down. "I'm okay, taking it one day at a time," I answered. "That's all you can do, and hey, you're doing amazing," she said, offering a reassuring smile. I nodded. "Thanks, I couldn't have done it without your support." "We're in this together," she said, raising her glass. "To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," I echoed, clinking my glass with hers. The next few months were a blend of routine and small victories. Each doctor's visit brought good news. My strength was returning, and with it, a newfound determination to live life on my terms. The treatments had worked, and the doctors were optimistic. I was officially in remission. As I walked into the office that morning, I felt a sense of pride. I had not only kept my job through the toughest times, but also excelled. My team greeted me with warm smiles and congratulations. The workday was busy, but I didn't mind. Being productive gave me a sense of normalcy. Later, I met Sarah for lunch. She had been more than a friend. She was my pillar of strength. "You look radiant, Emily," she said as we sat down at our favorite cafe. "I feel it too, Sarah. It's like a new beginning," I responded, smiling. "And you deserve every bit of it." "So, what's next for you?" she asked, sipping her coffee. "I've been thinking about that. I want to give back, maybe volunteer at the cancer center. Share my story, help others," I said, the idea resonating with me more and more. "That's wonderful, Emily. You'll be amazing at it," she encouraged. After lunch, I went for a walk in the park. The sun was shining and the air was fresh. I took a moment to sit on a bench and just breathe. Life was precious, and I was here, living it. As I walked back home, my phone rang. It was my boss, Mr. Thompson. "Emily, good news. The board has approved your proposal for the new project," he said. "That's fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Thompson." "I won't let you down," I replied, excitement building up. "I know you won't. Keep up the good work," he said, before ending the call. Back at home, I reflected on my journey. From the shock of my diagnosis to the betrayal and divorce, it had been a roller coaster of emotions. But here I was, standing tall. I decided to write a blog post, sharing my story with the world. As I typed, the words flowed effortlessly. It was a story of pain, resilience, and ultimately, triumph. When I hit publish, I felt a sense of liberation. My story was out there, and if it could inspire even one person, it was worth it. My name is Sarah, and this is my story. I'm married to Tom, a kind-hearted man with a smile that could light up the darkest room. We've been married for 4 years, but it feels like we've been together for a lifetime. We met at a local coffee shop, bumped into each other by accident, and the rest, as they say, is history. But there's one part of my life that feels more like a recurring bad dream. Martha, Tom's mom. Martha is, well, she's a character. Since we got married, she's had this habit of dropping by unannounced. It was annoying at first, but now it's just part of our daily routine. She's got something to say about everything and anything I do, and it's never praise. It was just another Tuesday evening. I was in the kitchen, the aroma of roasted chicken filling the air, setting the table for 3. Tom was on his way home, and Martha, of course, decided to pop in. "Chicken, Sarah? Again?" Martha walked into the kitchen, her voice dripping with disappointment. "If it were me, I'd have made pork. Tom loves my pork roast." I tried to keep my cool. "Tom likes chicken too, Martha, and it's healthier." She clicked her tongue, moving closer to inspect the salad. "Lettuce and tomatoes. How original." Just then, Tom walked in. "Something smells good," he said, wrapping his arms around me. He kissed my cheek before noticing his mother. "Mom, what a surprise." "Not a good one, apparently," Martha muttered, eyeing the chicken like it had personally offended her. Tom caught my eye, a silent plea there. "Be nice to her," it said. "She's had a tough year." I sighed, the fight draining out of me. "Dinner's ready. Let's eat." We sat down, and the usual happened. Tom talked about his day. I chimed in with stories of my own, and Martha found a way to criticize every single thing. When Tom complimented the chicken, saying it was just as good as any pork roast, I saw Martha's lips thin, but for once, she kept quiet. That night, as Tom and I cleaned up, and Martha watched her favorite game show in the living room, I wondered how many more dinners like this I could take. It wasn't the chicken or the pork that was the problem. It was the constant feeling of not being good enough for the woman who mattered most to Tom. But as I looked at Tom, who was whistling while drying the dishes, I knew I'd endure it, for him. Because that's what you do for love, right? You put up with a little rain to get to the rainbow. Or in my case, a little bit of Martha to get to the rest of my life with Tom. If life were a straight road, mine had taken a turn into a lane with speed bumps named Martha. When I found out I was pregnant, Tom and I were over the moon. But joy comes with its own set of challenges. My job as an event planner was demanding, with hours as unpredictable as Martha's mood swings. So I made the tough choice to step down to a less taxing role, which unfortunately meant a smaller paycheck. It was a Sunday morning, and I was flipping pancakes, humming to myself, feeling content. Tom was reading at the table, and then, as if on cue, Martha walked in, her presence immediately changing the air. "So, Sarah, how does it feel to contribute less to the household?" Martha didn't waste any time, going straight for the jugular as she poured herself a cup of coffee. I flipped another pancake, choosing my words carefully. "It feels responsible, Martha. I need to take care of myself and the baby." "Babies don't need money, huh? Interesting logic," she retorted, taking a sip and making a face. "This coffee is weak." Tom looked up, his brow furrowed. "Mom, that's not fair. Sarah is doing what's best for our family." Martha scoffed. "Oh, please. When I was pregnant, I worked until the day I gave birth, and I made sure to contribute equally." I plated the pancakes and sat down, trying to keep the peace. "Times are different now, Martha, and I'm still working, just not as much." She shook her head, her disapproval as clear as the sunny day outside. "You just make sure you don't get too comfortable. Money doesn't grow on trees." The conversation hung heavy over breakfast. Even the pancakes tasted like tension. Tom squeezed my hand under the table, a silent show of support. But as I watched Martha pick at her food with a sour expression, I knew this was far from over. I was bracing myself for a long road ahead, full of Martha's backhanded comments. But in my heart, I knew the peace of mind from a lesser-stressed pregnancy was worth any pay cut. And I'd do it all over again if it meant a healthier me and a healthier baby. Life has a funny way of flipping the script. Before Jamie, my home office was a place of tranquility. Now it's a circus, and I'm the juggler. Working from home while taking care of a newborn is like trying to thread a needle on a roller coaster. But it's our roller coaster, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. One Wednesday afternoon, as I was knee-deep in emails and baby burp cloths, the doorbell rang. I knew without looking. It was Martha. "Just a minute," I called out, balancing Jamie on one hip and my laptop on the other. When I opened the door, there she stood, purse and judgment in hand. "You look like you could use some help," she remarked, pushing past me into the living room. I followed her, settling Jamie into his bouncer. "I've got it under control, Martha. It's just a busy day." She peered at my laptop screen, then at Jamie, who was trying to decide if he was hungry or sleepy. "Doesn't seem like it. You know, when Tom was a baby, I made sure everything was spotless, and he was always my focus." I bit my tongue, resisting the urge to defend my scattered living room. "Well, times have changed, Martha. Working from home is a balancing act." She sat down, watching me like a hawk. "Does Tom know how chaotic it is here?" I sat across from her, trying to maintain a sense of calm. "Tom understands. He knows I'm doing my best." Martha tutted, looking around with thinly veiled disapproval. I suppose your best will have to do." I wanted to tell her that my best was more than enough, that I was a good mom and a good worker. But with Jamie starting to fuss, I didn't have the energy for another round with her. As she left, Martha's parting words were, "Remember, Sarah, a mother's place is with her child, not with her work." I closed the door gently, leaning against it for a moment. Her words stung, but as I picked up Jamie and he smiled, all gums and drool, I knew I was doing all right. Work can wait. These moments with Jamie cannot. And if that means my living room is a bit messy, so be it. It's our mess, and it's perfect. 4 years into our marriage, and life had settled into a rhythm, albeit one constantly interrupted by the discordant notes of my mother-in-law, Martha's visits. The first year of Jamie's life was a whirlwind of diapers, late-night lullabies, and the struggle of maintaining a career from the confines of our home. Now, as I stepped back into the professional arena, my heart ached with the separation from my little boy, but also fluttered with the excitement of reclaiming a piece of my identity. The office was just as I remembered, yet everything felt different. Colleagues welcomed me back with smiles and gentle inquiries about Jamie. My desk, once a shrine to efficiency, now also housed a colorful array of drawings and a photo of Jamie's toothless grin. Each email I sent was punctuated by thoughts of him, each project plan a reminder of the plans I had for his future. Arriving home that evening felt like crossing a finish line. I was greeted by the music of Jamie's giggles as Tom, ever the doting father, flew him around the living room like an airplane. They were in their own world, and for a moment, I was an outsider looking in. It was a pang of jealousy only a mother returning to work could understand. Before I could even kick off my shoes, the door swung open and Martha made her entrance. "Sarah, back to work I see. And Jamie?" she asked, her tone laced with accusation. "He's been at daycare, and he's doing great," I said, trying to keep my voice light as I took Jamie into my arms. She raised an eyebrow, a silent judgment I knew all too well. "Daycare? At his age? I never would have." Tom intervened. "Mom, the world's different now. We're doing what's right for our family." Martha huffed, moving to the kitchen. "Well, I hope you know what you're doing." The conversation hung in the air, a stalemate of generational differences. Tom and I exchanged a weary look. This was our normal, a delicate dance of defending our choices. Dinner was a quiet affair, Jamie's high chair an island of cheer in a sea of unspoken tensions. Martha barely touched her food, her disapproval a palpable presence at the table. Afterward, as Tom put Jamie to bed, I found myself alone with Martha. "Martha, I know you don't agree with our choices, but I need you to trust that we're doing what's best for Jamie," I said, clearing the plates. She looked at me, her eyes softening for just a second. "Sarah, I just want what's best for him too." "I know, and I appreciate that. But best can mean different things," I replied, hoping to bridge the gap between us. She nodded slowly. "I suppose you're right, but it doesn't mean I have to like it." As I finished the chores and sat down to catch up on some work, the house quieted down. I mulled over the day's events, the juggle between professional and personal, the constant scrutiny from Martha. Each thought was a thread in the complex tapestry of modern motherhood. Over the next few weeks, I found my stride, balancing deadlines with daycare drop-offs, boardroom meetings with bedtime stories. I was proving to myself, more than to Martha, that I could excel at both roles. But her words lingered like a shadow, a reminder of the tightrope I walked daily. One evening, as I watched Jamie sleep, his chest rising and falling in peaceful slumber, I realized that this was my why. The long hours, the missed cuddles, they were all for this moment of tranquility, for the future we were building. And as I turned off the light, a sense of determination settled in my heart. Martha might never understand, but that was okay. This was our life, our choices, our grind. And with Tom and Jamie by my side, I was ready for all of it. When Tom and I approached Martha about watching Jamie while I worked, she accepted with a strange spark in her eye. "Of course I'll watch him. A grandmother's place is with her grandchild," she had said, almost triumphantly. The first day, I left Jamie with her, armed with a list of instructions and a kiss on his forehead. "If you need anything, call me," I reminded her, feeling the familiar tug at my heart as I walked out the door. "Sarah, go to work. We'll be fine," Martha said, her voice tinged with the confidence that only grandmothers possess. But as the days passed, her enthusiasm began to wane. Each evening, I returned to a litany of complaints. "He wouldn't nap. He's too fidgety. He throws his food," she'd report with exasperation. One evening, as I handed her a cup of tea, I ventured cautiously, "Martha, if it's too much, we can look into a daycare for Jamie." She set her cup down with a clatter. "No, I don't trust those places. I'll watch him." "But you seem so tired, and I hate seeing you like this," I replied, concern lacing my words. Martha's eyes met mine, stubborn as ever. "I said no, Sarah. I'm his grandmother. It's my job to endure. And who better to look after him than family?" Her refusal was a familiar dance, one where my suggestions were met with resistance, my concerns with cold rebuttals. "Okay, Martha, if that's what you want, I acquiesced, knowing that arguing was futile. Each morning, I left Jamie in her care, my heart squeezed tight with worry. Each evening, I returned to find Martha a little more worn, a little less patient, but always insistent that she would continue caring for him. Her resilience was as admirable as it was frustrating. I watched her pour her love into Jamie, even as it drained her, and I was left in a constant state of gratitude and guilt. Tom and I would talk after Jamie's bedtime, turning over options in quiet conversation, but we always circled back to Martha's steadfast refusal to let anyone else take over. Just when I thought we had settled into our new normal with Martha looking after Jamie, the unthinkable happened. I was in the middle of a work presentation when my cell phone buzzed incessantly in my pocket. Excusing myself, I stepped out to see Martha's number on the screen. "Martha, I'm at work. Is everything okay?" I answered, my voice tight with concern. "Sarah, I can't do this today. You need to come and get Jamie. Now." Martha's voice was terse, frazzled. I felt a surge of anxiety. "What's wrong? Is Jamie all right?" "He's fine, but I'm not. I need you to come. I can't handle this," she insisted. Panic knotted my stomach. "I can't just leave work at a moment's notice, Martha. Can it wait until my lunch break?" There was a pause, and then, "You'll regret not coming," she said ominously, and hung up. My heart raced. I called back, no answer. I called the daycare to see if they could take Jamie last minute. They could, but I needed to drop him off. I rushed back to my presentation, my mind far from work. An hour later, as soon as I could, I hurried to my car, calling Martha again. Still no answer. Then, a call from an unknown number stopped me dead in my tracks. "Mrs. Thomas? This is Officer Daniels. We have Jamie here at the police station. A woman brought him in, said she couldn't care for him anymore." My breath caught in my throat. "I'll be right there." I sped to the station, thoughts whirling in chaos. Tom met me there, his face pale with worry. "Mr. and Mrs. Thomas?" The officer greeted us. "Your son is safe. The woman, she said she was the grandmother, left him here. She claimed she was feeling unwell." Relief flooded me at the sight of Jamie in the officer's arms, unharmed. "Thank you," I managed to say, taking Jamie into my embrace. Tom and I exchanged a look, the same question in our eyes. What do we do about Martha? We found her at home, sitting on the sofa, flipping through a magazine. "Mom, what happened? Why did you leave Jamie at the police station?" Tom's voice was a mix of anger and disbelief. Martha looked up, unfazed. "I told Sarah I couldn't do it. I wasn't feeling well, and I needed rest." "But you left our son with the police," I exclaimed, still holding Jamie tightly. She shrugged. "I knew they'd find you. I just needed some peace and quiet." Tom ran his hands through his hair, frustration etched on his face. "You can't just abandon a child, Mom, especially not your grandson." Martha sighed, a theatrical display of exhaustion. "Well, I told you I needed you to come, Sarah. You should have come." The implication that this was my fault stung, and I realized then that Martha's manipulations knew no bounds. This wasn't just about her being tired or ill, it was about control. As we put Jamie to bed that night, his small frame snuggled between us. The severity of Martha's actions sank in. This was a breach of trust that couldn't be mended with apologies or excuses. We had to protect our little family, and unfortunately, that meant setting boundaries with Martha. She had taken her opposition to me too far, and we couldn't risk Jamie's safety on her whims. The morning after the police station incident, our house was steeped in a heavy silence. Tom and I sat at the kitchen table, cups of coffee untouched, while Jamie played with his toys on the floor, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around him. "We need to talk to her, Tom. What she did." I started, the anger from the night before simmering in my voice. Tom nodded, his face grim. "I know. I'll call her." He dialed Martha's number, and I could hear the faint sound of a ringtone from the living room where she slept. There was a click, and then her voice. "Tom, what is it?" "Mom, why didn't you tell us you were feeling unwell before taking Jamie to the police?" Tom's voice was steady, but I could hear the underlying strain. There was a pause on the other end. I just needed to rest. I thought they would call you immediately. Martha's voice was a mix of defensiveness and weariness. But that's not the way to handle it, Mom. You scared us to death. Tom pressed on. I didn't mean to. Martha's voice cracked, and I wasn't sure if it was genuine remorse or another act. Tom sighed. We're going to see what the officers at the station say. They mentioned there was a recording. Martha was silent again, and then, fine, do what you need to do. The call ended, and Tom and I got ready to go to the station. We needed answers. At the station, Officer Daniels greeted us. We have the footage from when she brought Jamie in. You should see this. We braced ourselves as the officer played the video. There was Martha, looking calm and collected as she handed Jamie over to the officer. Her voice was clear, devoid of distress. I can't do this anymore. He's the grandson. My heart sank. There was no sign of the sick, distressed grandmother she had claimed to be. We need a copy of this, Tom said, his voice hard. Back home, Martha was pacing the living room. When we walked in, she turned to us, a question in her eyes. We saw the footage, Martha, I said, my voice cold. You weren't sick. You weren't in distress. You lied. Martha's face fell, and then, unexpectedly, she sat down, her shoulders slumping. I couldn't handle it. I thought I could, but... Tom interrupted her. You put Jamie at risk. You lied to us, to the police. How could you? Tears streamed down Martha's face, but the theatrics didn't move us this time. I'm sorry, she whispered. But it was too late. The trust was broken. That evening, after Martha had packed her things and left, Tom, Jamie, and I sat in the living room, a tight little circle. We didn't say much, but we didn't need to. We had each other, and we would move forward, together. The truth had been painful, but it had also set us free. It had only been a few days since Martha had left when she unexpectedly reappeared at our doorstep. As if the incident had never occurred, she stood there with a smile, offering to watch Jamie. Martha, what are you doing here? I asked, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. I've come to help with Jamie, like before. You obviously need the help, she said, brushing past me into the house. I was dumbfounded. Martha, after what happened, you think we can just go back to how things were? She turned to me with a defiant look. Well, it wouldn't have happened if you had come when I called, she retorted, her words sharp like daggers. Before I could respond, Tom walked in, his face darkening at the sight of his mother. What are you saying, Mom? That this was Sarah's fault? Martha's eyes didn't waver. If she had been a stay-at-home mother like she should be, none of this would have happened. That's when Tom exploded, the anger and frustration that had been simmering for days finally boiling over. How dare you? You do this out of spite for Sarah, and you put Jamie in danger because of it. Martha recoiled as if slapped, her facade crumbling. Tom, No, Mom, I don't want to hear it. You've crossed a line. You deliberately ignored Sarah. You neglected your grandson, and for what? To prove a point? His voice was a crescendo of outrage. She tried to interrupt, to defend herself, but Tom wouldn't have it. I can't trust you anymore, Mom. I don't want you here. I don't want to talk to you until you realize the gravity of what you've done. Martha looked between us, the realization dawning that she had indeed gone too far. Without another word, she turned and left, the finality of the moment hanging heavy in the air. Tom turned to me, his eyes filled with a mixture of regret and resolve. I'm sorry, Sarah. I should have seen it sooner, but I promise you, Jamie's safety comes first. We come first. I nodded, the solidarity between us more potent than ever. I know, Tom. We'll get through this, just like we always do. Together. We knew the road ahead would be without Martha, at least for the foreseeable future. It was a painful but necessary decision, a line drawn to protect our son, our family, our peace. My name is Rebecca, and I'm an artist. Not the kind you see in fancy galleries, but the kind who spends her days in a modest charity center, painting with kids who've seen more than they should. I've always believed that art can heal, and every day I see it happen with these children. I live with my husband, Mark, a sales manager who's always chasing the next big deal, and his mother, Martha, who's never seen a reason to hold back her opinion. Our home is a constant buzz of Mark's phone calls and Martha's TV shows. It's not easy, but it's life. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, I decided to share some exciting news. Mark, Martha, I entered some of my paintings and the kids' artwork in a city contest. The prize is $100,000. Mark, scrolling through his phone, didn't even look up. That's nice, Rebecca, but let's be real. What are the chances? Martha snorted. With those street kids' drawings? You're dreaming, dear. I tried to explain. It's not just about the prize. It's about showing what these kids can do, how they express their... Mark cut me off. Rebecca, why don't you find a real job? Something that actually pays? I sighed, looking at my half-chopped vegetables. It's important to me, Mark. This job, these kids, they matter. Moreover, my salary at the center is quite enough to pay bills and food. Martha waved a dismissive hand. We need real money, Rebecca, not child's play. I finished dinner in silence. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and disappointment. I believed in my dream, in the magic of art, and maybe, just maybe, the contest could be a new beginning. But at home, it felt like my dreams were nothing but whispers in a storm. I closed my eyes, picturing the colorful, chaotic art room at the center, the place where my heart felt fullest. Tomorrow, I'd go back there, to my little haven of paints and smiles, away from the doubts and the cold reality of my home life. This contest, it was more than a chance for money. It was a chance to prove to myself, and maybe to Mark and Martha, that what I do is valuable, that it has the power to change lives. And with that thought, I drifted off to sleep, dreaming of vibrant colors and the sound of children's laughter. Each day at the Charity Center was a journey into a world where paint and canvas became tools of transformation. There, surrounded by children who had seen the darker side of life, I found my purpose. We painted murals together, walls turned into vibrant stories of hope, each brushstroke a testament to their resilience. I remember one afternoon, a shy little boy, Timmy, who had never picked up a brush before, created a bright sun with rays stretching across the wall. His smile, as he stepped back to admire his work, was brighter than the sun he'd painted. Moments like these were my daily reminders of why I did what I did. But at home, the story was starkly different. One evening, I returned home, still carrying the joy of the day's achievements. Eager to share, I approached Mark and Martha in the living room. Mark, look at this, I said, showing him a picture of the mural. Timmy painted this sun. He's never drawn anything before. Mark glanced at the photo and then back at his phone. That's nice, but it's just a drawing, Rebecca. Kids doodle all the time. Frustration welled up inside me. It's not just a doodle, Mark. It's a big step for him. He's been through so much. Martha cut in sharply. Rebecca, when will you stop playing therapist with paint? It's a child's drawing, nothing more. You need to start living in the real world. Her words felt like a slap. It's not just playing, Martha. These kids, they find a voice through their art. It's healing for them. Mark let out an exasperated sigh. Healing? What about our mortgage, Rebecca? Your healing isn't going to cover it. You need a real job. I clenched my fists, trying to control the rising tide of anger and hurt. This is a real job, Mark. It's making a difference. Martha snorted. Difference? What difference does it make when I'm ashamed to tell my friends where you work? You need to wake up and see reality, Rebecca. I stood there, words failing me. The gap between my world at the center and my world at home had never felt so vast. In one, I was helping to rebuild lives. In the other, I was constantly reminded of my supposed inadequacy. That night, in the solitude of my studio, I stared at the blank canvas. The harsh words from earlier echoed in my mind, drowning out the laughter and joy of the day. I picked up my brush, and with each stroke, I tried to paint away the hurt, the doubt, and the feeling of being undervalued. The day was winding down at the Charity Center, the walls echoing with the lingering laughter of children. I was cleaning up the paints when my phone rang, displaying an unfamiliar number. "Hello, Rebecca Thompson speaking," I answered. "Miss Thompson, this is John Harris from the City Arts Council. Congratulations, you've won our citywide art contest. The prize is $100,000. We'll be in touch soon for further details and discuss an additional opportunity to collaborate with the city." The news hit me like a wave. I won? My voice trembled with a mix of shock and joy. "Yes, indeed. Your and the children's work truly stood out," John replied, his voice warm with genuine admiration. I thanked him profusely and hung up, my heart racing. This was beyond my wildest dreams, a validation of our efforts, of the children's talent, and in some way of my own. I shared the news with the children, and their reaction was heartwarming. Their cheers and claps filled the room with an energy that was almost tangible. This was our collective victory. Later, as the center quieted down, I sat with Lisa, the psychologist, over a cup of tea. I shared my apprehensions about breaking the news at home. Mark and his mother have never really seen the value in what I do. They might just see the money, I confided. Lisa leaned forward, her eyes thoughtful. "Why not test their reaction? See if this win changes their attitude. It might reveal their true colors." Her suggestion struck a chord. At home, my work had always been trivialized, its impact constantly undermined. This win, this significant recognition, could indeed be the litmus test for their genuine sentiments. I pondered over Lisa's advice as I made my way home. The idea was both unsettling and necessary. If the money swayed their attitudes, it would uncover the uncomfortable truth about their regard for me and my work. Stepping into the house that evening, I decided to hold off on sharing the news just yet. I wanted to observe, to plan my approach carefully. Lisa's words echoed in my mind, and I knew she was right. It was time to find out the truth, however uncomfortable it might be. I went to bed that night with a mix of anticipation and apprehension. I was sure of Mark's love, or at least I wanted to be. But Lisa's proposal was an opportunity to see beyond my hopes, to understand the reality of my home life. I agreed with her. It was a test worth taking. That evening, I decided it was time to put my plan into action. Sitting at the dinner table with Mark and Martha, I took a deep breath and said, "I have something to tell you. I won the city art contest. The prize is $100,000. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Mark's fork dropped to his plate with a clatter, and Martha's eyes widened in disbelief. $100,000? Rebecca, that's incredible, Mark exclaimed, his usual indifference replaced by a surprising enthusiasm. Martha, who had always been quick with a critical word about my job, suddenly softened. "Dear, that's wonderful news. We're so proud of you," she said, her tone unusually warm. During the meal, Martha fussed over me more than she ever had, offering me the best pieces of chicken and constantly refilling my glass. Mark, too, was uncharacteristically attentive, asking about my artwork and the contest in detail. Their newfound affection was overwhelming, almost suffocating. I noticed them exchanging glances, a silent communication that I couldn't decipher. It was as if a switch had been flipped, and the usual cold, dismissive atmosphere had transformed into one of exaggerated warmth and interest. Later that evening, I stepped out of my room to get a glass of water and overheard a hushed conversation coming from the living room. Curiosity got the better of me, and I quietly moved closer. "We can finally redo the kitchen like we wanted," I heard Martha say in a hushed tone. "And get that new car. We deserve it after all," Mark added, his voice laced with greed. There was a pause before Martha spoke again. "Once we have the money, we can think about... Well, Rebecca doesn't really need to stay here anymore, does she?" My heart sank as I listened. Their words were like daggers, revealing their true intentions. The affectionate dinner wasn't for me. It was for the money. They were already planning to spend my winnings on themselves and even discussing getting rid of me. I quietly retreated to my room, their words echoing in my ears. The test had revealed their true colors, and they were darker than I had imagined. I lay in bed, a mix of hurt and clarity washing over me. This was not the love and support of a family. It was opportunism, plain and simple. As I closed my eyes, the weight of their betrayal pressed heavily on my heart. The truth was out, and now I had to decide what to do with it. The morning air was tense as I sat down for breakfast with Mark and Martha. The news I was about to break would surely stir the pot, but I was determined to see it through. Casually, I started, "I've decided what to do with the contest money." They both perked up, leaning in with a keen interest that had been absent before. "I'm donating the entire $100,000 to the charity center," I said, watching their faces for reaction. The response was immediate and explosive. "What?" Mark slammed his hand on the table, his face red with anger. "Are you out of your mind, Rebecca?" Martha's voice was shrill, filled with disbelief and outrage. "You're giving away our ticket to a comfortable life? You foolish girl!" I remained calm, though their words stung. "It's not our money. It's mine, and those kids need it more than we do." Mark's voice was laced with scorn. "This is the most idiotic thing I've ever heard. You're a fool, Rebecca." Martha's anger bubbled over, her words harsh and unfiltered. "You've always been a disgrace, pretending to be some saint with those street kids. And now this? Throwing away a fortune?" I tried to explain. "It's not throwing it away. It's helping children who have nothing." But Mark was relentless. "It's not just about the money. You've always been this way, naive and foolish. I should have seen it sooner. I was planning to wait, spend the money first, but now? Now I want a divorce, Rebecca. I can't be with someone who throws away opportunities like this." His words cut through me, but they also brought clarity. This was the reality of our marriage, stripped of any pretense. I looked at them both, my decision firm. If that's how you feel, then it's clear to me now. This marriage, this relationship, was never about us. It was about convenience, about money. Without another word, I stood up and walked away from the table, away from the vitriol and greed. Their shouts and insults followed me, but they no longer had the power to hurt me. I had seen the truth, and it had set me free. The days following my announcement were cold and quiet. The house felt more like a battleground than a home. Mark and Martha avoided me, their disappointment and anger hanging in the air like a thick fog. I was packing some of my belongings in the bedroom when Mark walked in. His face was hard, his eyes void of the warmth I once knew. "So, you're really doing this? Throwing away our life for some charity?" he asked, his voice edged with bitterness. "I'm not throwing away our life, Mark. I'm choosing to do what's right with my money," I replied, folding a sweater into my suitcase. He let out a harsh laugh. "Your money? It was supposed to be our ticket out of here, Rebecca, and you just gave it away like it was nothing." "It was never about the money for me, Mark. It's about helping those kids, something you never understood." His frustration boiled over. "You're so blinded by your so-called mission that you can't see the real world. You're a dreamer, Rebecca, and dreamers don't survive." I zipped up my suitcase, feeling the finality of the moment. Maybe that's the difference between us, Mark. I dream of making a difference, while you dream of money. Mark's face tightened. "You know what, Rebecca? Maybe it's better this way. I can't be with someone who doesn't see reality. I want a divorce." The words stung, but they didn't surprise me. "If that's what you want, Mark." He turned to leave, then stopped. "You were always a fool, Rebecca. I just didn't see it until now." After he left the room, I sat on the edge of the bed, the weight of his words sinking in. The love I thought we had was overshadowed by greed and misunderstanding. As I carried my suitcase downstairs, Martha didn't even look at me. Her disdain was clear, her silence louder than any words. Stepping out of the house, I felt a sense of relief mixed with sorrow. The chapter of my life with Mark and Martha had closed, but ahead of me was a path of my own making. I got into the taxi, glancing back at the house one last time. This wasn't just an end, it was a beginning of a life where I could be true to myself and my dreams, free from the chains of greed and misunderstanding. The day to sign the divorce papers arrived with a mix of relief and finality. I walked into the lawyer's office, feeling a sense of purpose. Mark was there, and to my surprise, Martha accompanied him. Their presence together was a stark reminder of the life I was leaving behind. As we sat down, Martha didn't waste any time. "You're making a huge mistake, Rebecca. Throwing away a marriage over some charity money," she hissed, her tone laced with disdain. "And how do you plan to survive? With your tiny salary? You can't even afford a decent place to live," she continued, her words sharp and biting. Mark sat silently, casting contemptuous glances at me. I listened to Martha's tirade, feeling a strange detachment. Their words no longer had the power to hurt me. Once the paperwork was done, and it was time to leave, I turned to them, a smile playing on my lips. "You know, I was just testing you," I said, their confused looks fueling my confidence. "Testing us?" Mark echoed, puzzled. "Yes, I wanted to see how you'd react if I said I was donating all the money, and you both showed your true colors." Martha's face contorted in confusion. "What are you saying?" "I'm not giving all the money to charity. That was a lie. And the city? They've given me several lucrative projects. I'm going to be just fine," I said, the satisfaction of revealing the truth making my words strong and clear. The color drained from Mark's face, and Martha's mouth hung open in shock. Their reaction was everything I had expected and more. Mark suddenly found his voice, desperation seeping through. "Rebecca, please, I'm sorry. I didn't mean any of it. Can we start over?" I looked at him, once my husband, now a stranger begging for a second chance. "No, Mark, we can't. You showed me who you really are, and I have no desire to be with someone like that." Turning to Martha, I added, "And you, Martha, should know that money isn't everything. What I do, my work, it matters more than any luxury you crave." Without another word, I walked out of the office, leaving them behind in their shock and disbelief. I walked into the sunlight, feeling lighter and more confident than I had in years. The divorce was the end of a painful chapter, but it was also the beginning of something new. A chapter where I was the author of my own story, unburdened by others' greed and deception. It was a freedom hard-earned and well-deserved. The months following my separation from Mark and Martha unfolded like a series of vibrant brushstrokes on a once blank canvas. I found myself immersed in a new rhythm of life, one that echoed with the sounds of children's laughter at the charity center and the quiet concentration of my work on city projects. My world, once confined to the expectations and criticisms of a household that didn't understand me, had expanded into a realm where my passion for art and my dedication to helping others were not just acknowledged, but celebrated. I had rented a small apartment in a quaint part of town. It wasn't luxurious, but it was mine, a sanctuary where the walls were adorned with my paintings and the cheerful artwork of the children from the center. Each piece told a story, a reminder of the journey I had embarked on and the lives that had intertwined with mine. The decision to donate half of my prize money to the charity center had set a series of unexpected events in motion. The local newspapers and community blogs picked up the story, intrigued by the artist who chose charity over personal gain. My phone began ringing with inquiries and offers. Local gallery owners, once indifferent, were now eager to showcase my work. My paintings, which had been a source of solace in my darkest times, were now being admired in well-lit galleries, appreciated by people who saw in them the same hope and beauty that I did. The city projects, too, brought a newfound recognition. I was commissioned to design murals for public spaces, transforming bland walls into tapestries of color and life. Each project was a new adventure, an opportunity to leave a mark on the city that had become my larger canvas. In the midst of this newfound success, I occasionally received messages from Mark. His texts, laden with apologies and pleas for a second chance, were a stark reminder of the life I had left behind. I read them, sometimes with a mocking smile, but mostly with a sense of detachment. The pain he had caused was a part of my past, a chapter that had closed the day I walked out of that house. His words, once capable of cutting me deeply, now seemed superficial, like ripples on the surface of a lake that could not disturb its depths. Evenings in my apartment were a time of reflection and creativity. I would often sit by the window, a cup of tea in hand, looking out at the city lights, thinking about the twists and turns my life had taken. The betrayal and hurt had been a crucible, burning away the illusions and leaving behind a clarity of purpose. I realized I had found strength in my vulnerability, courage in facing the unknown, and an unshakable belief in the power of art to heal and transform. On weekends, I conducted art workshops at the charity center. The children, each with their own story of resilience, continued to be my greatest inspiration. We painted together, our collective imagination turning blank canvases into expressions of joy, pain, and hope. I saw in their eyes the reflection of my own journey, a testament to the healing power of art. As the city embraced my work, my personal life too began to flourish in new ways. I made friends in the art community, a group of eclectic and supportive individuals who appreciated me for who I was. We shared stories, laughed, and dreamed together. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of belonging. One evening, as I finished a painting for an upcoming exhibition, I stepped back to take it all in. The vibrant colors on the canvas, the sense of accomplishment, the peace that filled my heart. It was a far cry from the days of doubt and belittlement. I had emerged from the shadows of a stifling relationship into the light of self-discovery and fulfillment. As I closed the lights that night and settled into bed, I thought about the future. It was unwritten, full of unknowns, but I was no longer afraid. I had weathered the storm and found my rainbow on the other side. My story was one of transformation, a reminder that even in our darkest moments, there is the potential for a masterpiece, and I was just getting started.
I'm Ava, a 29-year-old stay-at-home mom living in a cozy house I inherited from my grandma. It's not just any house, it's a piece of my childhood filled with memories of baking cookies with grandma and playing hide and seek in its spacious rooms. Now, it's home to my own little family, my husband, Mark, a hardworking manager, and our 2-year-old sunshine Lily. Life sounds picture perfect, right? Well, it's not. The problem starts right next door, where Mark's parents, Helen and Frank, live. Our relationship, let's just say it's like mixing oil and water. Mommy, more juice! Lily's voice cuts through my thoughts. I pour her some juice, glancing at the clock. Almost 5 p.m. Time for the daily invasion. As if on cue, the door swings open. Ava, we're here! What's for dinner? Helen announces, with Frank shuffling in behind her. Hi, Helen. Frank? I've made a casserole, but it's just enough for Mark, Lily, and me, I reply, trying to keep my voice steady. Frank frowns. What do you mean, just enough? You know we come over for dinner? Helen chimes in, her tone sharp. You're at home all day, Ava. Is it too much to ask for a decent meal? I take a deep breath, feeling the frustration bubble up. I have my hands full with Lily, and cooking for 4 is a bit much every day. Mark walks in, tired from work. What's going on here? Your wife doesn't want to cook for us, Frank says, his voice raising. Mark looks at me, then at his parents, and sighs. Can't you just make a bit more, Ava? My frustration peaks. It's not about the amount, Mark. It's about respect and boundaries. Helen scoffs. Boundaries. We're family. Lily, sensing the tension, tugs at my dress. Mommy, I'm hungry. I kneel to her level. Let's get you seated, sweetie. Dinner is a tense affair. Mark's parents eat the sandwiches they brought, throwing disapproving glances my way. The TV blares in the background. Lily's fidgeting in her chair, and I'm trying not to crumble under the weight of this daily chaos. After they leave, Mark sits on the sofa, absorbed in his phone. We need to talk about this, I say, standing in front of him. He doesn't look up. Not now, Ava. I'm tired. And just like that, I'm left alone in the kitchen, cleaning up the mess, both literally and metaphorically. This is my life, a constant battle of wills, with me on one side and the world on the other. Life has a funny way of testing you, and mine's turning into a daily pop quiz with no right answers. I'm Ava, still juggling motherhood, a marriage that's running on autopilot, and in-laws who've mistaken my home for a free-for-all diner. It's another morning in our house, and I've made a decision. Today, I'm cooking only for 3, me, Mark, and our little Lily. Let's see how this goes. Lily's in her high chair, happily smearing oatmeal on her face when Helen and Frank barge in, just like clockwork. "Morning, Ava. What's for breakfast?" Helen asks, a bit too cheerily. I take a deep breath. Morning. I've only made enough for Lily and me today. Frank's face turns red. What do you mean? Are we supposed to starve? No, you're supposed to take care of your meals, I reply, trying to keep my voice calm. Helen's eyes narrow. This is ridiculous, Ava. We are family. You can't just... I cut her off. I can, and I did. I have enough on my plate with Lily and the house. Mark comes in, rubbing his eyes. Why's everyone shouting so early? Your wife refuses to cook for us, Frank's voice booms. Mark looks at me, then at his parents, and says, Ava, why are you making things difficult? Difficult? I almost laugh. Mark, I'm not a 24/7 restaurant. I need help, not more mouths to feed. Mark doesn't say anything, just grabs a piece of toast and leaves for work. The day drags on. I can feel the tension thickening in the air. Dinner time rolls around, and I've stuck to my guns. Dinner for 3. Helen and Frank show up, each holding a sandwich. They sit down, unwrapping their food with exaggerated slowness. The TV's volume goes up, and up, until it's like we're at a rock concert. Lily's rubbing her eyes, clearly struggling to stay awake amidst the noise. Could you turn that down? Lily's trying to sleep, I ask, my patience wearing thin. Frank grunts. We can't hear it if it's any lower. Helen adds, You shouldn't be so uptight, Ava. It's just TV. It's not just TV. It's my home turning into a battleground, and I'm losing. Lily starts to cry, and I scoop her up, escaping to the quiet of her room. Later, Mark comes home to find his parents still there. The living room, a mess. Lily asleep in my arms. What happened here? He asks, looking around. I'm too tired for another round of arguments. Just the usual, I say, my voice flat. He doesn't push it, and neither do I, but inside, I feel something shift. I'm at my breaking point, and something's got to give. Every day feels like walking on eggshells in my own house. I'm Ava, still trying to find a balance between being a mom, a wife, and now, apparently, an unwelcome host to my in-laws. But today, it's not the in-laws that shake my world, it's Mark. It's late evening. Lily's finally asleep after what felt like hours of soothing. I'm clearing up the toys when Mark walks in, looking like he's carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. Ava, we need to talk, he says, avoiding eye contact. I sit down, bracing myself. What is it, Mark? He takes a deep breath. I made a mistake with our finances. I invested in something and it didn't pan out. I feel a chill run down my spine. What do you mean? How bad is it? It's bad, really bad. I've lost a lot, like $100,000. My heart stops. 100,000. How could you do that without telling me? Mark runs his hands through his hair, looking anywhere but at me. I thought I could make it big, you know? Fix everything. Fix what? We were fine. I can barely keep the tremor out of my voice. He finally looks at me, his eyes pleading. I know, but now we need a plan. A plan? I echo, feeling numb. Yeah, I was thinking, maybe we could move my parents into our house, rent out their place to cover the debts. My mind races. His parents in our house? Full time. The very thought makes me feel like I'm suffocating. Mark, are you serious? After everything with your parents, you want them here in our house all the time?
He sighs. I know it's not ideal, but we don't have many options, Ava. I stand up, anger and disbelief swirling inside me.
Not ideal. It's a nightmare, Mark. And you just decided all of this without even talking to me?
He stands too, his voice rising.
What was I supposed to do, Ava? I'm trying to fix this.
By making my life a living hell, I shoot back.
There's a silence, heavy and suffocating. Finally, I speak.
My voice barely a whisper.
Fine. Move them in. But this is on you, Mark?
He nods, looking relieved and guilty all at once, but all I feel is a deep, sinking dread. This isn't just about money anymore. It's about trust, and I'm not sure how we come back from this. The day my in-laws moved in, it wasn't just their suitcases that entered our home. It was a tidal wave of chaos. Right from the start, it's clear that Helen and Frank are here to stay, and they have their own ideas about how things should be. Frank, put that box in the living room and careful with it. Helen's voice echoes through the hallway as she directs her husband with military precision. I watch, holding Lily, who clings to me, wide-eyed at the commotion. Then, as if things couldn't get worse, Helen turns to me, Ava. We need to talk about rearranging the house. We need space for our things. I feel a knot in my stomach. Rearranging, Helen? There's not much space to work with. She waves her hand dismissively. Nonsense. Let's start with Lily's playroom. She can play in her bedroom, right? I'm taken aback. That's her space, Helen. She loves it there. Frank, carrying a heavy box, chimes in. Kid won't mind, Ava. Don't make a fuss. Lily buries her face in my neck, and I realize this is just the beginning. The days that follow are a blur of unwelcome changes. Helen and Frank unpack their belongings, turning the living room into their personal space. They replace my tasteful decor with their old-fashioned knacks, and the TV blares day and night with their favorite shows. I try to cook dinner one evening, with Lily tugging at my apron. Frank strolls in, eyeing the pots on the stove. What's this? Another one of your experimental dishes. I bite my tongue. It's a new recipe, Frank. If it's not to your liking, feel free to make something yourself. He laughs. In my day, women knew how to cook for their families. I feel a flash of anger, but before I can respond, Mark enters, looking weary. Can't we have one peaceful meal? I turn to him, my patience wearing thin. Peaceful? Mark, your parents have turned our home upside down. He avoids my gaze, grabbing a beer and retreating to the now occupied living room. Weeks pass, and the tension only grows. Helen has opinions on everything, from how I raise Lily to how I should manage the house. Frank, meanwhile, has taken to criticizing my cooking at every meal. One afternoon, I'm folding laundry when Helen walks in. Ava, these sheets aren't folded properly. Let me show you how it's done. I set my jaw. Thanks, Helen, but I've been folding sheets my whole life. She tuts, clearly not the right way. As she refolds the sheets, I feel a sense of helplessness. My own home no longer feels like mine. Night falls and I'm lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. The muffled sounds of the TV and my in-laws' laughter seep through the walls. Lily is asleep, but rest eludes me. I think back to the days when this house was filled with love and laughter, a stark contrast to the present. It feels like I'm losing a part of myself, bit by bit, as each day passes. Mark's side of the bed is empty. He's been spending more and more time working late. I'm left alone, wondering how things got this bad, and what, if anything, I can do to take back control of my life and my home. In a house that once felt like mine, I'm Ava, now a spectator in my own life. With my in-laws' takeover and Mark's growing distance, I'm left grappling with suspicions that refuse to settle. One afternoon, while Lily naps and the house is momentarily quiet, I call my brother, Jake. He's always been the one I turn to in tough times. "Hey, Jake," I say, trying to sound casual.
Ava, how's it going? Haven't heard from you in a while.
I take a deep breath. Not great, Jake. I'm worried about Mark. He's different. Jake's tone shifts, more serious now. Different how? He's always working late, secretive with his phone, and there's this tension, like he's hiding something. Jake pauses, then says, "You think he's seeing someone else?" The words sting, even though I've thought them 1,000 times. I don't know, Jake. I just feel like I'm losing him. There's a resolve in Jake's voice when he speaks.
Let me do something. I have a friend, a private detective. He can discreetly check on Mark, see what's up.
I'm hesitant. A detective? Isn't that a bit much? Ava, if something's wrong, you need to know. For you and Lily. I sigh, a mix of relief and fear. Okay, do it. But, Jake, keep it quiet. I don't want to stir up more trouble if it's nothing. You got it. I'll take care of it, he assures me. Days pass, and each of Mark's late nights and hushed phone calls add to my growing unease. Then, one evening, Jake calls.
Ava, I have some news. Can you meet me tomorrow? Just you? My heart sinks. Yes, I can make it.
The next day, I sit across from Jake in a quiet cafe, the air thick with anticipation. So, what did you find out? I ask, my voice barely above a whisper. Jake hesitates, then hands me an envelope. Ava, it's not good. I open it to find photos and reports. There's Mark with a woman I don't recognize and a child. My world spins. He has a child? Jake nods solemnly.
I'm sorry, Ava.
The detective confirmed it. Mark's been living a double life. Tears blur my vision. How could he do this? To me? To Lily? Jake reaches across the table, his hand on mine.
You're stronger than you know, Ava. We'll figure this out together.
I nod, wiping away tears. I need to confront him, Jake. He has to explain this. Be careful, Ava. You don't know how he'll react.
I have to know, Jake. I have to know why.
Armed with the truth, but shattered inside, I head home. A confrontation is inevitable, and I need to brace myself for the storm that's about to hit. It's the evening of the dinner, and I'm Ava, preparing a meal that I know even my critical mother-in-law can't find fault with. The house is buzzing with a tense energy as I await the arrival of my brother, Jake.
Tonight is about more than a family dinner. It's about unveiling a painful truth.
As I set the table, I can feel the weight of the envelope in my pocket, heavy with the evidence of Mark's betrayal. My hands shake slightly, but I steady myself. This needs to be done. The dinner starts off like any other. Mark's parents, Helen and Frank, along with Mark, sit around the table, complimenting the food for a change. I catch Mark's eye, and he gives me a small, oblivious smile.
It's almost time.
Jake arrives, apologizing for being late. As he sits down, he casually turns to Mark. So, Mark, Ava told me about your investment ventures. Sounds interesting. Mark, caught off guard, coughs.
Oh yeah, it's nothing big.
I watch as Jake probes further.
What kind of investments? Stocks? Real estate?
Mark stumbles over his words. A bit of everything, really. I can see the confusion on Jake's face, feigned for the others, but all too real for me. Can you tell me more? I've been looking to invest myself? Mark fumbles, clearly out of his depth. It's complex stuff, hard to explain over dinner. That's my cue. I pull out the envelope and place it on the table, pushing it towards Mark. Maybe this will help explain, I say, my voice steady. Everyone's attention shifts to the envelope. Mark opens it, his face draining of color as he sees the photos, him with another woman and a child. Helen gasps, "Mark, what is this?" Frank looks on, stunned into silence. Mark tries to speak, but nothing coherent comes out. He looks at me, betrayal in his eyes.
Eva, why? Why? You have a second family, Mark. How could you do this to us?
So you moved your parents to my house, and with the money you received from renting their apartment, you kept your mistress? I'm almost yelling now, the pain and anger I've been holding back spilling over. The room is silent, the air thick with shock. Helen and Frank look between Mark and the photos, disbelief written all over their faces. "You lied to us, to your own family," Helen whispers, her voice filled with hurt. Frank just shakes his head, unable to find words. Mark stands up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I need to explain," he says, "but it's clear no explanation can undo this." He walks out of the room, and I'm left there with his parents in a deafening silence. The air in the house is thick with tension the morning after the revelation. I'm Eva, still reeling from the shock, but ready to face the consequences. Helen and Frank, Mark's parents, confront me in the kitchen, their faces twisted with anger. Helen's voice is sharp as a knife.
"You! This is your doing! You drove our son to this!"
I stare at her, disbelief and anger mixing in my gut.
"Me? Your son lied to all of us, Helen?"
Frank chimes in, his voice just as accusing. "He was always a good boy until he married you. You must have pushed him away." My hands tremble with fury. I pushed him away. I cared for our family while he... Helen cuts me off. "Oh, save it. You probably had men on the side too. That's why he did what he did."
"I've had enough. How dare you?"
I yell. "I've been nothing but loyal and supportive, and you blame me for your son's betrayal?" Frank steps closer, his face red. "Our son would never have done this if it weren't for you." I take a step back, my heart pounding. "You know what? I don't need to listen to this.
This is my house, and I want you out. Now..."
Helen scoffs. "You can't kick us out. This is our son's house too." I stand my ground, firm and unwavering. "No, Helen. This house was my grandmother's, and now it's mine. You have no right to be here after what you've said." Frank looks like he wants to argue, but Helen grabs his arm. "Let's go, Frank. We don't need to stay where we're not wanted." As they pack their things, I feel a mix of relief and sadness. Once they're gone, I lock the door behind them, the click of the lock echoing in the empty house. Alone in the silence, I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I look around the house, my house, and for the first time in a long while, I see a future where Lily and I can be free from lies and betrayal. I pick up the phone to call a locksmith. It's time to change the locks, to change our lives. The house feels different today, like a new chapter has just begun. I'm Eva, standing in my once troubled living room, now a space of peace and possibility. The legal battle is over, and the court's decision still echoes in my mind. I recall my lawyer's words from yesterday. The court has granted you substantial alimony and compensation for Mark's deceit and infidelity. He'll be paying for quite some time. I had felt a mix of relief and vindication hearing that. It wasn't about the money. It was about accountability. Lily, oblivious to the complexities of the adult world, plays on the floor. Her laughter is a balm to my soul. I watch her,
thinking about our future. The phone rings, snapping me back to the present. It's Jake, checking in. Hey, Ava, how are you holding up? I smile. Better, Jake. Much better. The court's decision helped close a painful chapter. Jake's voice is warm. I'm glad, Ava. You deserve peace after all this. I glance at Lily. We both do. As I talk to Jake, I can't help but think about Mark. The last I heard, he was struggling to make ends meet, now living with his parents again. It's ironic, I say to Jake. He's back where he started, but this time by his own doing. Jake sighs. He brought it on himself, Ava. You did what you had to do. I nod, feeling a sense of closure. Mark's choices led him here, and I no longer feel any obligation to worry about him. After the call, I sit with Lily, watching her play. The court's decision has given us a financial cushion, but more importantly, it's given us freedom. Mommy, look! Lily holds up a drawing of our house. Our home, she says proudly. I hug her. Yes, sweetie, our happy home. I realize then that this is just the beginning for us. A beginning filled with hope, strength, and the love we have for each other. The road ahead is ours to shape, and I feel ready to embrace whatever comes our way, with Lily by my side.
I've always found solace in the quiet aisles of bookstores, the kind where time seems to have its own rhythm and stories leap from tattered pages. At 29, running a business that my parents helped me set up, I often escape to these havens, seeking the company of books over people. That day at Dusty Pages, a little haven tucked away in the city's heart, was no different. Or so I thought. As I wandered through the maze of shelves, my fingers traced the spines of countless books, each holding a universe within. My quest was specific, a rare, antique edition that had eluded me for months. And there it was, almost glowing amidst the dust and shadows. As I reached out, another hand mirrored mine, halting inches from the prize. Startled, I looked up into a pair of curious eyes. The owner of the hand was a man about my age, with a kind of easygoing charm. "Oh, I'm sorry," he said, quickly retracting his hand. "Were you going for this one?" "Yeah, I've been on its trail for ages," I replied, surprised at my own honesty. He gave a half smile. Me too. "It's a tough find. But go ahead, you found it first." His gesture, so simple yet rare, caught me off guard. "Are you sure?" "I mean, we both found it at the same time," I said, feeling a strange mix of guilt and gratitude. "Yeah, I'm sure. I'm Jake, by the way," he introduced himself, extending his hand. "Nice to meet you, Jake." "I am, well, let's just say I'm a fellow book lover," I said, shaking his hand. His grip was firm, friendly. We both chuckled, and I took the book, feeling a twinge of victory mixed with sympathy. "You're a rare breed, Jake. Giving up a find like this." He shrugged. "Books come and go. But it's not every day you get to make someone's day." I laughed. "Well, you've certainly made mine. I'm in this place often, but I haven't seen you around." "You a regular?" "Nah, first time here. I usually stick to the tech world, but there's something about old books, you know?" I nodded, understanding all too well. We found a corner table amidst the stacks and started talking about books, life, and everything in between. He was easy to talk to, a listener with stories of his own. He was curious about my business, but I dodged the topic, not ready to delve into the whole successful businesswoman with family support narrative just yet. Hours slipped by like minutes as we talked. I learned about his tech job, his love for hiking, and his surprisingly good taste in old movies. In turn, I shared my love for antique books, my random adventures, and my guilty pleasure of bad reality TV shows. As the bookstore began to dim its lights, signaling closing time, we exchanged numbers. "It was really great meeting you, Jake. Maybe we can do this again, talk more about books, or anything else, I said, feeling a connection I hadn't anticipated. Absolutely, he replied, his smile genuine. I'll hold you to that. And maybe next time, I'll find the book first. After several months of dating Jake, the inevitable happened, meeting his family. He'd warned me about them, how they were a bit, well, let's just say they had their quirks. He was especially worried about them finding out about my business and the money situation. So, I decided to play it down, saying I was a freelancer. Just a simple girl writing articles, nothing fancy. We drove to his parents' house one Sunday. It was a modest home, the kind that had seen better days. The moment we walked in, I felt the weight of their eyes sizing me up. Mom, Dad, this is... Jake started. I'm Sarah, I cut in, offering a smile that felt more like a shield. His mom, a stern-looking woman with a permanent frown, gave me a once-over. Sarah, huh? And what is it you do? I'm a freelance writer. I write articles for websites, I replied, trying to sound as humble as possible. His dad, a quiet man with a knack for disappearing into the background, just nodded. But it was Jake's sister, Linda, who spoke next. A freelancer? So, like, you don't have a real job? Linda's voice dripped with a mix of curiosity and disdain. I felt Jake's hand tighten around mine, a silent plea for patience. Well, it pays the bills. It's honest work, I said, keeping my tone light. Linda snorted. Sounds more like freeloading to me. Bet you're just waiting to latch onto Jake's income. Dinner was an awkward affair. His parents made small talk, asking Jake about his work, barely acknowledging my presence. Linda, on the other hand, was like a dog with a bone, dropping snide remarks every chance she got. So, Sarah, freelancing must be tough. Bet you don't get to go on fancy trips or buy nice things, Linda said, her eyes sharp. I forced a laugh. Oh, you know, I manage. I like simple things. Jake tried to change the subject, talking about a recent project he was working on. But Linda wouldn't let up. And what about kids? Planning on any? Or would that be too much for a freelancer to handle? She pressed on. I could feel Jake's frustration growing, mirroring my own. We haven't really thought that far ahead, he said, his voice tight. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of uncomfortable exchanges and forced smiles. Things started heating up after that awkward dinner with Jake's family. It wasn't long before his mom and sister, Linda, began dropping by our place uninvited. They'd come in, plop themselves on the couch, and make themselves right at home, often staying for hours. It was like they were marking their territory, reminding me that I was the outsider. One such afternoon, while Jake was at work, his mom and Linda showed up. As usual, they made a beeline for the kitchen, expecting to be fed. I had just made some sandwiches for myself, which they took as an invitation to lunch. So, Sarah, still freelancing? Linda asked, taking a bite of the sandwich I had made for myself. I nodded, trying to keep my cool. Yep, still at it. It's going well. And how much does that bring in, if you don't mind me asking? His mom chimed in, her eyes scanning my modest living room like she was calculating my worth. I shrugged, enough to get by. I don't really discuss my finances. Linda smirked, must be nice, living off Jake while pretending to work. I clenched my jaw, feeling my patience wearing thin. Actually, I pay my own bills. Jake and I keep our finances separate. Their prying continued, but I dodged their questions, keeping my answers vague. They seemed to take pleasure in trying to undermine me, questioning my lifestyle, my job, even my relationship with Jake. Then came the family dinner at Jake's mom's place. It was supposed to be a casual get-together, but it felt more like a trial by fire. We all sat around the dining table, the air thick with unspoken tensions. Linda, who had been oddly quiet, suddenly turned to Jake. So, brother, I was thinking, for my son's birthday, you could get him that gaming console he's been wanting. It's a bit pricey, but you can afford it, right? Jake, who had been picking at his food, looked up, surprised. Linda, you know I can't do that. Things are tight right now, what with the wedding and all. Linda's face turned sour. Oh, so now that you're married, you suddenly can't spare a dime for your nephew? Jake's frustration was evident. It's not about that, Linda. Sarah and I have our own expenses. I can't just splurge on expensive gifts. The argument escalated, with Linda accusing me of monopolizing Jake's finances and attention. You've changed, Jake. Ever since she came into your life, you've been stingy and distant. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, the unspoken blame hanging heavy in the air. Jake tried to defend me, but Linda wouldn't have it. She stormed out, leaving a trail of tension behind. After the blow-up at the family dinner, Jake and I decided we needed a break from all the drama. We planned a short trip to the mountains, a chance to clear our heads and get some breathing room. It was a peaceful, rejuvenating escape, just the two of us and nature. But the moment we returned, reality crashed back in, harder than ever. We barely had time to unpack when there was a furious knocking at our door. I opened it to find Linda, red-faced and fuming. "We need to talk," she said, pushing past me into the apartment. "What's going on, Linda? Why are you here?" I asked, closing the door. She whirled around, eyes blazing. "Don't play dumb, Sarah. I know what you're doing. You're bleeding Jake dry, using his money to go on fancy trips and buy expensive stuff. And now you're turning him against his own family." I was taken aback by her accusation. "Linda, that's not true. We both pay for our expenses, and this trip was planned long ago." She wasn't listening, though. "You think you're so clever, huh? Making him think he doesn't need us, that we're just after his money. But I see right through you." Jake came out of the bedroom, having heard the commotion. "Linda, what the hell? You can't just barge in here and start accusing Sarah of nonsense." She rounded on him. "Nonsense? Look at you, Jake. Ever since she came into your life, you've been different. You used to help us, be there for us. Now you're just her puppet." Jake's patience was wearing thin. "Linda, I'm not anyone's puppet. Sarah and I make our decisions together. And as for helping you, I can't keep bailing you out every time you have a financial problem." Linda's anger seemed to boil over. In a fit of rage, she swept her arm across the coffee table, sending my collection of antique books crashing to the floor. "This is what you care about now? Old, useless books and a gold digger?" I gasped, rushing to salvage my books. Jake grabbed Linda's arm, steering her towards the door. "That's enough, Linda. Leave. Now." She struggled against him. "You'll regret this, Jake. Choosing her over your own family." After she left, the apartment was eerily silent, the tension hanging thick in the air. Jake helped me pick up the books, his face a mix of anger and regret. The weeks following Linda's outburst were quiet, almost nearly so. Jake and I had started to relax a bit, thinking maybe, just maybe, his family had decided to back off. That was until we got the call from his mom about her birthday dinner at a fancy restaurant downtown. When Jake mentioned that his mother's birthday dinner would be at Le Jardin, I couldn't help but grin. I had a special connection with that place, a little secret that I hadn't shared with anyone, not even Jake. As we drove to the restaurant, I could sense Jake's anxiety. He fidgeted in his seat, clearly worried about how the evening would unfold after the recent tensions with his family. "You okay?" I asked, reaching over to give his hand a reassuring squeeze. "Yeah, just hoping tonight goes smoothly," he replied, forcing a smile. Le Jardin was as elegant as ever, with its dim lighting and soft music creating an intimate ambience. Jake's family was already there, seated at a large, round table. The scene was lively, with animated conversations and laughter, but it all seemed to pause as we approached. I quickly noticed there was only one empty chair. Jake, with a hint of confusion in his voice, addressed his sister, Linda. "Hey, Linda, why is there only one seat? We're both here." Linda, with a smirk that didn't quite reach her eyes, said, "Oh, Jake, we assumed Sarah wouldn't mind. After all, this is a family gathering, and she's not really family, is she? Maybe she can find a spot at the bar." The table erupted in a mix of awkward chuckles and murmurs. Jake's face turned a shade of red, a mixture of embarrassment and anger. I felt their eyes on me, expecting me to react, to show some sign of hurt or outrage. But instead, I laughed, a genuine, hearty laugh. "That's quite all right, Linda. I wouldn't want to impose." Jake, still holding my hand, looked at me with a puzzled expression. "Sarah, you sure you're okay with this?" I squeezed his hand. "Absolutely. Don't worry about me. I'll find a place. Enjoy the dinner." As I stepped away from the table, I could feel their eyes on me, a mix of surprise and uncertainty in their gaze. I approached the restaurant manager, a familiar face, with a confident stride. "Hi, John, seems there's a bit of a mix-up at our table. Could you find a spot for me?" I asked, my tone light but firm. John's professional demeanor broke into a smile of recognition. "Of course, Sarah. For the owner of Le Jardin, we always have the best table available." The words were loud enough for Jake's family to hear, and I glanced back to see their expressions shift from smug satisfaction to utter shock. Linda's and her mother's mouths hung open, their plan to belittle me backfiring spectacularly. As John led me to a beautifully set table in a prime location, I couldn't help but savor the moment. The irony of the situation was delicious, and their stunned faces were a sight to behold. Sitting at my own VIP table at Le Jardin, I couldn't help but feel a mix of triumph and amusement. Jake sat across from me, his expression still a mix of shock and pride. "Sarah, why didn't you tell me you own this place?" he asked, his eyes wide with curiosity. I shrugged, sipping my wine. I guess I never found the right moment. And, honestly, I wanted to keep some parts of my life just for me, at least for a little while. He laughed, shaking his head. "This is incredible. No wonder you weren't fazed by Linda's comment." Our meal was delightful, the food exquisite as always, but the real entertainment was the drama unfolding at the family table. Midway through our dinner, Linda and Jake's mom, with hesitant steps and awkward expressions, approached our table. "Sarah, we didn't know," Jake's mom stammered, clearly struggling to find the right words. "Yeah, about the restaurant, and you owning it," Linda added, her usual confidence deflated. I put down my fork, giving them a calm look. "It's okay. Not many people do. I prefer to keep my business affairs private." Jake's mom fidgeted, glancing at the other table where the rest of the family was pretending not to eavesdrop. I mean, about the bill tonight. We assumed you'd." I raised an eyebrow. "You assumed I'd pay because I own the place?" They both nodded, visibly uncomfortable. I could tell they were expecting me to bail them out of the awkward situation they had created for themselves. I leaned back in my chair, choosing my words carefully. "Well, as much as I'd love to treat everyone, I think it's important for us to stick to what was planned. It seems, someone said that I'm not a family member, right?" The look on their faces was a mix of surprise and embarrassment. Linda, usually so quick to speak, was at a loss for words. They returned to their table, their departure marked by a few curious glances from the other guests. Turning back to our meal, Jake let out a low whistle. "Well, that was something." I laughed, the tension from earlier completely diffused. "Just a typical dinner with your family, huh?" He nodded, his eyes still on his family's table. "You know, I'm starting to think these dinners are cursed." We finished our meal in peace, the atmosphere at our table starkly contrasting with the palpable tension at the family table. As we left the restaurant, I felt a sense of closure, like I had finally established my place in this complicated family dynamic. Their attempts to belittle me had backfired, and in revealing a part of my life I had kept private, I had gained an unexpected upper hand. The ride home from Le Jardin was filled with a mix of silence and soft music playing in the background. Jake seemed deep in thought, occasionally glancing at me as if he was about to say something but then deciding against it. Finally, as we pulled into our driveway, he spoke up. "Sarah, I'm really sorry about tonight. My family, they can be too much." I turned off the car's engine and looked at him. "Jake, it's not your fault. But we do need to talk about this." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Yeah, I know. What do you think we should do?" I took a moment before answering. "I think it's time we set some boundaries. Your family's behavior has been out of line, and tonight was it was too much." Jake nodded, his expression grave. "I agree. I just never expected things to get this bad. Linda and Mom, they've always been difficult, but this..." "It's not just about Linda and your mom," I interjected. "It's about respecting our relationship, our choices. They can't keep treating me, like this." Jake reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. "You're right. I'll talk to them. It's time they understand that they can't walk all over us." The following day, Jake made the call. I could hear bits and pieces of the conversation from the other room. His tone was firm, resolute. After he hung up, he came into the living room, looking somewhat relieved but also apprehensive. "I did it. I told them we need space, that their behavior is unacceptable. They didn't take it well, but I think it's for the best." I got up and gave him a hug. "Thank you, Jake. I know that wasn't easy." He hugged me back, tight. "You're worth it. I should have done this a long time ago." The weeks that followed were surprisingly peaceful. No unexpected visits, no snide remarks, no drama. It was a relief, but also a bit surreal. One evening, as we were enjoying a quiet dinner at home, Jake looked up from his plate. "You know, I've been thinking. Maybe this break from my family is a good thing. Gives us time to focus on us, on what we want." I smiled, reaching across the table to hold his hand. "I've been thinking the same thing. It's nice, isn't it? Just being us, without all the noise." He nodded, a contented smile spreading across his face. "Yeah, it really is." Cutting ties with Jake's family wasn't an easy decision, but it brought a sense of clarity and peace to our lives. It was a step towards prioritizing our happiness and well-being, a step that was long overdue. Sitting on our living room couch, Jake and I were enjoying a quiet evening. The room was filled with the soft glow of the lamp and the faint sound of a jazz record playing in the background. I couldn't help but reflect on the roller coaster of events that had unfolded in our lives recently. "Jake," I started, breaking the comfortable silence, "do you ever think about how things would have been if we had I don't know, given in to your family's demands?" He looked over at me, his eyes thoughtful. "Sometimes, yeah, but then I remember how unhappy we were, constantly trying to please them. I think we made the right choice." I nodded, feeling the weight of his words. "It's just crazy, you know? How much we've been through because of all this. Makes me wonder what's really important in life." Jake reached out and took my hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. "What's important is this, us, being honest with each other, standing up for what we believe in." I smiled, feeling a sense of warmth spreading through me. "You're right. I guess it's all about finding a balance, isn't it? Between dealing with family and staying true to ourselves." "Yeah, balance," he echoed, his gaze shifting to the window. "You know, before all this, I always thought family was about sticking together no matter what. But now, I realize it's more than that. It's about respect, understanding, and sometimes, distance." I leaned my head on his shoulder. I never expected my life to turn out like this. Meeting you, starting a business, dealing with all the family drama. It's been a journey. And what a journey it's been, he added with a chuckle. With its ups and downs, but I wouldn't change a thing. We sat there in silence for a while, lost in our thoughts. The challenges we had faced with his family had tested us in ways we never anticipated. But through it all, we had grown stronger, both as individuals and as a couple. That evening, as we sat together, I realized that life is unpredictable and often challenging. But with the right person by your side, it's an adventure worth every moment. Our story wasn't just about dealing with difficult in-laws or running a successful business. It was about love, resilience, and the power of standing together against the odds.
I'm Lily, a 32-year-old woman who believed in the warmth of love and the promise of a shared future. My husband, Ethan, was once the sun in my sky, but over the years, his light has dimmed, leaving me in a growing chill of neglect and harsh words. It started subtly, a missed dinner here, a harsh word there. But then it became our norm. His once tender glances turned cold, and his touches, which used to spark joy, became rare and perfunctory. One particularly cold evening, I was attempting to bridge the distance that had formed between us, setting up a nice dinner hoping to recapture some of our old warmth. "Ethan, dinner's ready," I called out, trying to inject some cheer into my voice. He walked in, his eyes scanning the table, not a flicker of appreciation in his gaze. "You know I don't like salmon," he muttered, his words clipped. "But you used to love it," I replied, the hurt clear in my voice. He shrugged, dismissing my effort and the memories attached to it. "That was then. Can't you do anything right, Lily?" His words stung, each one a reminder of how far we'd drifted. I bit my lip, holding back tears, as I watched him eat in silence, his indifference a stark contrast to the love-filled meals we once shared. After dinner, as I was cleaning up, the weight of his growing disdain and blame became too much to bear silently. "Why do you treat me this way, Ethan? What happened to us?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He scoffed, standing up to leave the room. "Maybe if you weren't so barren, things would be different. You're just not enough, Lily. Not as a wife, not as a woman." His cruel words echoed in the now empty room, each syllable etched painfully into my heart. I was left alone, with the remnants of a dinner that tasted of lost love and broken dreams. That night, as I lay in bed, Ethan's presence beside me felt like miles apart. I turned away, my silent tears a testament to the cold shift that had taken over our lives. It was clear that I was alone in my pain, my longing for a child turned into a weapon of blame and shame. The next day, I confided in my diary, the only place I felt safe to express my deepest fears and sorrows. "He doesn't see me anymore, doesn't hear me. I'm just a shadow in my own home, a ghost of the woman I used to be." The evening of the family dinner arrived with a tension I could almost taste. Ethan's parents, Mary and George, had always treated me with kindness, a stark contrast to their son's recent coldness. As we gathered around the dining table, the air was filled with the clinking of cutlery and the simmering undercurrent of unspoken issues. George, ever the patriarch, raised his glass to toast. "To family," he declared with a warm smile. "To family," we echoed, our voices a chorus of varying emotions. As the dinner progressed, the conversation drifted to the topic I dreaded most, children. George, with his usual bluntness, broached the subject. "For years, Ethan, Lily. We were hoping for a grandchild to spoil by now." Ethan's mother, Mary, chimed in, her voice gentle yet firm. "Perhaps it's time to consider seeing a specialist. There could be many reasons for not conceiving, and it's best to understand them." I felt Ethan's gaze on me, his eyes like ice. "We know the reason, don't we, Lily?" "It's her," he said, his voice dripping with accusation. The words stung, more so under the concerned gaze of his parents. "It's not just about me, Ethan. It takes two, you know," I replied, my voice steady but my hands trembling under the table. Mary, with her medical background, sensed the tension. "Then it's settled. Both of you will go for a checkup. It's the only way to know for sure, she stated, a note of finality in her voice. Ethan laughed, a hollow sound that didn't reach his eyes. Sure, we'll go. But we already know the answer, don't we? Later that evening, as Ethan and I cleaned up in silence, the weight of the situation bore down on me. The idea of the medical examinations loomed large, a beacon of hope and a source of dread all at once. Ethan, I started, breaking the silence, I'm scared. What if there's really something wrong with me? He didn't look at me, his focus on the dishes in the sink. Then we'll know, won't we? Better than living in denial. His words were meant to be dismissive, but I caught the flicker of something else in his voice. Fear? Uncertainty? It was hard to tell. As I went to bed that night, the house felt colder than ever. The uncertainty of the coming days was a heavy blanket, smothering the last embers of warmth between us. Yet, despite everything, a part of me clung to the hope that the tests might lead to a solution, a way forward out of this stagnant bitterness. The days following our medical examinations were some of the longest of my life. As I awaited the results, my thoughts constantly circled back to what they might reveal, to the myriad of ways they could impact our already strained relationship. Ethan, however, seemed more irritable than anxious, his patience wearing thinner with each passing day. One afternoon, as I sat lost in thought, Ethan stormed into the room, his face twisted with annoyance. Look at this place, Lily. It's a mess. You're so caught up in your own head, you've let the house go. Before I could respond, he grabbed my hand and practically dragged me into his office. Start here. I want every surface clean, especially my desk. I can't work in this filth. His words stung, but I bit my tongue and began to clean, my motions mechanical as I tried to suppress the hurt and confusion swirling inside me. As I moved to dust his desk, my hand accidentally caught the edge of a folder, sending it tumbling to the floor, papers spilling out in a chaotic cascade. I knelt to gather them, apologizing under my breath, but as I started to put them back, my eyes caught on the contents. There were medical insurance papers, hospital receipts for childbirth, all paid for by Ethan. A name I didn't recognize, likely the mother, was listed, along with a date not too far in the past. The truth hit me like a physical blow. Ethan had a child with another woman. My heart pounded, a mix of shock, betrayal, and a deep, searing pain coursing through me. But I knew I couldn't confront him, not yet. I needed to be smart, to gather evidence and plan my next steps carefully. Once I was sure Ethan was occupied elsewhere, I quickly copied all the documents, my hands shaking as I worked. Each copy was a silent confirmation of the lies and deceit that had infiltrated our marriage, of the double life Ethan had been leading right under my nose. As I tucked the copies away in a safe place, a strange sense of calm settled over me. The hurt was still there, a dull, persistent ache, but it was now accompanied by a clarity of purpose. I wouldn't let Ethan get away with this betrayal. I would bide my time, wait for the right moment to reveal everything. For the rest of the day, I moved through the house like a shadow, performing my chores with a mechanical efficiency. Ethan remained oblivious, wrapped up in his own affairs, unaware of the storm brewing just beneath the surface. That night, as I lay in bed, Ethan's breathing steady and even beside me, I couldn't help but wonder how many other nights he'd shared with another, how many lies he'd told to cover his tracks. The pain was almost unbearable, but it was also a catalyst, transforming my sadness and despair into a quiet, burning resolve. I didn't know what the future would hold, but one thing was clear, I wouldn't be the silent, suffering wife any longer. I would confront Ethan, confront the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The wait for the examination results was still there, a looming question mark in our lives, but it was no longer the only thing defining my existence. I had a plan, a purpose, and I would see it through to the end. No more waiting, no more wondering. It was time to act. As Ethan's birthday unfolded, the house buzzed with the hum of conversation and laughter, a stark contrast to the storm brewing within me. I circulated among the guests, a smile plastered on my face, my heart racing with the anticipation of the revelation to come. When it was time for Ethan to open his gifts, the room filled with the rustle of wrapping paper and appreciative murmurs. Finally, it was my turn. I handed him a neatly wrapped box, my hand steady, my resolve firm. "Happy birthday, Ethan," I said, my voice betraying none of my inner turmoil. He accepted it with a confident smirk, perhaps expecting something mundane, something that would affirm the facade of our marriage. But as he lifted the lid and his eyes scanned the contents, his expression morphed from smug assurance to utter shock. "What's this?" he stammered, his voice faltering as he held up the documents for the room to see. "It's the truth," I said simply, standing firm amidst the sudden wave of tension that swept through the room. The guests leaned in, a collective intake of breath filling the space as they tried to make sense of the scene unfolding before them. Ethan's mother, Mary, took the papers from his trembling hands, her eyes widening as she read the details spelled out on the page. "Ethan, is this true? Do you have a child with another woman?" Her voice was a mix of disbelief and rising anger. Ethan's face turned pale, his usual composure shattered. "It's not how it looks, I can explain." He fumbled with the papers, his gaze darting around the room, desperately seeking an ally. But there was no respite to be found. The guests murmured among themselves, the air thick with judgment and shock. Ethan's father, George, stood up, his face a mask of disappointment and rage. "Explain? How could you do this, not just to Lily, but to all of us? We're your family." His voice boomed, cutting through the whispers like a knife. Ethan opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. He looked around at the faces of friends and family, at the disillusionment and accusation reflected back at him. The room, once filled with the warmth of celebration, now felt cold, the air heavy with betrayal. I watched him, feeling a mixture of vindication and sorrow. "Everyone, I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but I thought it was time the truth came out," I said, addressing the room. The guests remained in place, the celebration forgotten, as the gravity of the situation settled upon us all. No one moved to leave, the shock of the revelation rooting them to the spot. The festive atmosphere had been irrevocably tainted, the joy of the occasion turned to ash. Ethan looked around, his eyes meeting mine, and in that moment, I saw the realization of the consequences of his actions dawn upon him. The room stayed silent, the tension palpable, as we all waited for what would come next. The revelation had been made, and now, there was no turning back. As the room's shock over the initial revelation began to settle, I knew it was time to deliver the final blow. Ethan, pale and shaken from the fallout of his exposed secrets, was still grasping at strangled threads of dignity when I stepped forward, holding another set of documents. "Ethan," I began, my voice clear and unwavering, "there's more you need to know." I handed him the envelope containing the medical results we'd both been anxiously awaiting. The room, already thick with tension, seemed to hold its breath as Ethan's hands trembled slightly while opening it. His eyes scanned the contents, and the color completely drained from his face, leaving him ghostly pale. "What is it, Ethan? What does it say?" his mother, Mary, demanded, her voice sharp with concern and growing anger. He couldn't speak, couldn't even lift his gaze from the paper that spelled out a truth so ironic it was almost poetic. He was the one who was infertile. I spoke up, filling the heavy silence. "The tests show that Ethan is infertile. It's not me who's been unable to conceive." The revelation hit the room like a physical force. Whispers erupted among the guests, a mix of sympathy for me and disbelief at Ethan's situation. His parents, Mary and George, looked from the papers to their son with expressions that morphed from shock to anger. "Infertile? But you blamed Lily all this time." Mary's voice cracked, her disappointment palpable. George stood, his disappointment hardening into a cold fury. "You've not only been unfaithful and lied to us all, but you dared to shame and blame Lily for something that was your own issue." The accusations flew, thick and fast, each one landing like a blow. Ethan's facade of control shattered completely, leaving behind a man I barely recognized. He was no longer the confident, sometimes arrogant person I had married. Instead, he was small, exposed, and undeniably alone. But I didn't know. he stammered, his voice barely a whisper against the storm of condemnation. "It doesn't matter if you knew or not," George boomed, his voice resonating with finality. "You've deceived everyone here, most of all Lily." The room buzzed with the weight of betrayal and deceit. Ethan's life, once so orderly and controlled, was unraveling before our very eyes. His once loving parents now looked at him with eyes filled with something akin to strangers' disdain. As the room processed the news, Ethan's mother, Mary, turned to him with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "Ethan, if you're infertile, then who is the father of your mistress's child?" The question hung in the air, heavy and ominous. Ethan's shock was apparent, his face contorting into an expression of disbelief and betrayal. I don't know. I never considered she might be cheating on me too." The admission sent a ripple through the room, the guests exchanging looks of disbelief and pity. George, Ethan's father, stood up, his stature commanding the attention of everyone present. "You've been deceived, son, just as you've deceived us all. It's a bitter irony that's hard to swallow." The accusations continued to fly, each word a nail in the coffin of Ethan's once neatly arranged life. His parents, once his staunchest supporters, now looked at him with eyes filled with disappointment and a deep, unspoken sadness. They had lost a grandson they thought they had and were now grappling with the reality of their son's deceit and the complexities of his betrayal. As the gravity of the situation sank in, Ethan seemed to crumble, his usual arrogance and control evaporating into the charged air of the room. I need to figure this out. I need to understand what's happened," he murmured, more to himself than anyone else. The guests began to leave, the atmosphere too charged with anger and disillusionment to bear. Ethan's parents remained, their expressions grim and thoughtful, a stark contrast to the joy and celebration that had marked the beginning of the evening. The room emptied until it was just Ethan, his parents, and me. The silence that followed was a testament to the broken relationships and trust that lay in tatters around us. Ethan's world had come crashing down, and as he sat there, head in his hands, it was clear that the journey ahead would be a difficult one, filled with introspection, legal battles, and the daunting task of rebuilding his shattered life. For me, the revelation of the medical results was a vindication of sorts, but it was also a reminder of the complex web of lies and deceit that had ensnared us all. As I looked around the room, at the faces of those I had once considered family, I knew that while this chapter was closing, the story was far from over. There were questions to be answered, wounds to heal, and a new path to forge. The tables had turned, indeed, but the full extent of the fallout was yet to be realized. The dust had barely settled after the revelations of Ethan's birthday when I found myself navigating the aftermath of our shattered marriage. The house, once filled with shared dreams and laughter, now echoed with the heavy silence of our broken vows. Ethan, a mere shadow of the man I once knew, tried to approach me the morning after, his eyes rimmed with red, a mix of sleeplessness and perhaps regret. "Lily," he started, his voice hoarse. I don't even know what to say." "What is there to say, Ethan?" I replied, my voice steady, a stark contrast to the turmoil inside. "The truth is out. There's no taking it back." He ran a hand through his hair, a familiar gesture that now seemed foreign. "I know I've messed up, more than I can ever fix. But I was scared, Lily. Scared of what it meant to be infertile, to not be able to give us, what we wanted." I sighed, feeling the weight of his words, yet unable to fully comprehend the depth of his deceit. "Being scared doesn't excuse your actions, Ethan. You lied, you cheated, and you hurt everyone around you, especially me." He nodded, the fight seemingly gone from him. "I know. And I'll do whatever it takes to make it right, if not for us, then for my own conscience." The room grew quiet, the air between us thick with unsaid words and unresolved pain. I knew that the path ahead was one I would have to walk alone, the trust and love we once shared now just remnants of a past life. In the days that followed, I took action. I met with lawyers, collected the necessary documents, and filed for divorce. Each step felt like a liberation, a reclaiming of the dignity and respect I had lost in the shadow of Ethan's betrayal. The legal proceedings were a blur, a series of meetings and signatures that dissolved the life we had built together. Ethan didn't fight it, his compliance a small solace in the storm of our separation. As I walked out of the lawyer's office, the final papers in hand, I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. My marriage was over, the dreams we shared irreparably damaged. Yet, I also felt a spark of hope, a sense that from the ashes of this ordeal, a new, stronger Lily was emerging. The community, once so integral to our lives, watched from a distance, their whispers and pitying glances a constant reminder of the scandal that had unfolded. But among the murmurs, I also found support, friends and neighbors reaching out with offers of help and words of encouragement. One afternoon, as I sat in the garden, the sun warming my face, Mary came to visit. Her eyes were kind, but I saw the hurt that still lingered there. "Lily, I just want you to know, we don't blame you. You've handled this with more grace than anyone could expect," she said, taking my hand in hers. I looked at her, the woman who had been like a mother to me, and felt a pang of shared loss. "Thank you, Mary. I just wish things could have been different." She squeezed my hand, a silent acknowledgement of the complex tangle of emotions that surrounded us. "You'll always be part of this family, Lily. No matter what." The conversation lingered in the air long after she left, a bittersweet reminder of the ties that still bound me to the life I was leaving behind. As I packed up my belongings, each object a memory of the life Ethan and I had shared, I realized that this wasn't just an end, it was also a beginning. A chance to rebuild, to rediscover who I was outside the shadow of my marriage. And as I turned the key in the lock one last time, leaving behind the house that had been my home, I knew that this wasn't just a farewell. It was a declaration of independence, a first step into a future that, while uncertain, was entirely my own. The finality of signing the divorce papers was both liberating and somber. I had filed for divorce from Ethan, demanding compensation for the emotional turmoil and betrayal he caused. My lawyer, a competent and empathetic woman, assured me that the evidence I gathered made a strong case for a substantial settlement. Ethan, on the other hand, found himself entangled not only in our divorce but also in a legal battle with the mistress who had deceived him. He had spent a fortune on medical expenses and supporting the child he believed was his, only to discover the web of lies that had ensnared him. Now, he was suing her, trying to recoup some of his losses and salvage what little dignity he had left. I watched from a distance as Ethan's once controlled and proud life unraveled. There was no joy in seeing him brought so low, but neither was there pity. He had made his choices, and now he was facing the consequences. The man I once loved had become a stranger, one whose fate no longer stirred any emotion in me other than a detached acknowledgement that justice, in its own way, was being served. As for me, I was busy building a new life. The settlement from the divorce provided a financial cushion that allowed me some peace of mind. I moved into a new place, smaller and cozier than the house I shared with Ethan, a place that quickly started to feel like home. It was my sanctuary, filled with my things, decorated to my taste, a visual representation of my newfound independence. I often sat in my new living room, a cup of tea in hand, reflecting on the tumultuous journey I had undergone. The tears and heartache felt like a distant memory, and in their place was a growing sense of self-awareness and strength. I had survived the worst of storms, and now relished the calm that followed. Friends and family were a constant source of support, their love and care helping to mend the parts of me that were broken by Ethan's betrayal. They cheered me on as I took the first tentative steps into a future that was entirely my own, unshaded by the expectations or failings of another. In the end, I found that I didn't need revenge or to see Ethan suffer. My greatest triumph was in reclaiming my life, in proving to myself that I could move past the pain and emerge stronger and more resilient. The wounds he inflicted would always be part of my story, but they no longer defined me. Instead, they were a testament to my ability to overcome and to thrive, despite the odds. As I closed this chapter of my life, I felt a profound sense of closure and optimism. The journey ahead was mine alone, filled with opportunities and experiences waiting to be discovered. And as I stepped out each day, I did so with a lighter heart and a certainty that no matter what the future held, I was ready for it, stronger and wiser than ever before. Ethan was a chapter closed, a lesson learned, and now it was time to write new stories, ones filled with hope, growth, and the promise of a better tomorrow. Hi there. I'm Linda. My life took a pretty unexpected turn when I married Tom. He was a great guy, a widower with a sweet little girl named Sarah. She was 7 when I came into the picture, her mom having left when she was just a toddler. I walked into their lives hoping to make things better, to bring some love and stability. But, let's just say, things didn't go as planned. The first time I met Sarah, I remember trying to break the ice. "Hey, Sarah, I've heard so much about you. I brought some cookies. Do you like chocolate chip?" I asked, holding out a plate. She just stared at the cookies, then at me, with this look of total indifference. "I guess," she finally muttered, taking one, but avoiding eye contact. Tom smiled apologetically. "She's a bit shy around new people. Give it time, Linda." I wanted to be patient, to understand what she was going through. But it wasn't long before I noticed her coldness wasn't just shyness. Things got even more complicated when our son Danny was born. Sarah's behavior took a turn for the worse. She seemed to resent him, seeing him as a threat to her relationship with her dad. One evening, I found Danny crying in his room. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" I asked, concerned. "Sarah said I'm a mistake and that Daddy doesn't love me," he sobbed. My heart sank. I confronted Sarah about it. "Why would you say something like that to Danny? He's your little brother." "He's not my brother. You're not my mom," she snapped back, her eyes defiant. Tom tried to mediate things, but it was like walking on eggshells. "Sarah, Linda's just trying to be a good mom to both of you." Sarah would roll her eyes. "She's not my mom. Don't forget that." It was tough. Every attempt I made to bond with her was met with resistance or outright hostility. And it wasn't just within our 4 walls. Her grandparents, Tom's parents, were another story. I remember one Sunday dinner, Tom's mom pulled me aside. "Linda, you need to try harder with Sarah. She feels left out since Danny came along." I was frustrated. "I've been trying, but she won't let me in. It's like she's decided to hate me no matter what I do." Tom's dad chimed in. "She's just a child, Linda. You're the adult here. You should make more of an effort." It felt like a no-win situation. I was trying my best, but nothing seemed to work. Sarah had built a wall around herself, and I just couldn't find a way through. As she grew into her teens, Sarah's behavior only got more challenging. She would flout rules, talk back, and her attitude towards me became more hostile. I felt like I was failing her, failing our family. But I wasn't about to give up. I just hoped that someday, somehow, we'd find a way to come together as a real family. Sarah's teenage years were like navigating a minefield. Every conversation felt like a potential explosion. I remember one morning trying to talk to her about school. "Sarah, why weren't you in school yesterday?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. She just shrugged, pouring herself a bowl of cereal. "Didn't feel like going." "But your education is important," I persisted. "You can't just skip school whenever you want." Sarah rolled her eyes, a smirk playing on her lips. "What are you gonna do, ground me? You're not my mom." I felt a flash of frustration. "I'm not trying to replace your mom, Sarah. I just care about you." She scoffed, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Yeah, right. You just want to make sure your perfect little family looks good." I was at a loss. How do you reach someone who's determined to keep you out? Tom, bless his heart, tried to bridge the gap between us. One evening, he sat down with Sarah, trying to have a heart-to-heart. "Sarah, Linda's just trying to help," he said gently. "She cares about you." Sarah's response was cold and bitter. "She's not my mom, Dad. Stop trying to make her into something she's not." Tom looked defeated, his usual optimism faltering. I know she's not your mom, but she's part of our family now. We need to try to get along." Sarah just got up and left the room, her silence speaking volumes. Tom's parents were another hurdle. They seemed to believe that I could do no right by Sarah. During a family get-together, Tom's mom pulled me aside again. "Linda, you need to be more understanding of Sarah's feelings," she said, her tone implying I was being heartless. I felt my patience wearing thin. "I've tried, but she won't let me in. It's like she hates me." Tom's mom just shook her head. "She's a sensitive girl. You need to try harder." It was like talking to a brick wall. No matter what I said, it seemed to fall on deaf ears. They had made up their minds about me, and nothing I could say or do would change that. The tension in our house was palpable. Danny, who was just a little boy, often got caught in the crossfire of Sarah's outbursts. He didn't understand why his sister was so hostile. "Why does Sarah hate us, Mom?" Danny asked one night, his little face scrunched up in confusion. I hugged him close, trying to shield him from the harsh reality. "She doesn't hate us, Danny. She's just going through a tough time." But even I wasn't convinced by my own words. Sarah's behavior was more than just teenage rebellion. It felt personal, targeted. And I couldn't help but feel responsible, like I was the catalyst for all this discord. I lay awake many nights, wondering where we had gone wrong. Was there something I could have done differently? Some way I could have reached out to her that I hadn't thought of? The questions haunted me, but answers were nowhere to be found. The day I got the call from the local police station about Sarah, my stepdaughter, felt like a punch in the gut. I was in the middle of a meeting when my phone vibrated relentlessly. Excusing myself, I stepped out to answer what I assumed was another of Sarah's school-related issues. "Mrs. Johnson, this is Officer Martinez. We've detained your stepdaughter, Sarah. She's involved in a vandalism incident." The officer's voice was firm, almost disapproving. "Vandalism? Are you sure we're talking about the same Sarah?" I stammered, my mind racing. "Yes, ma'am. Sarah Johnson, 15 years old. We need you to come and pick her up." I felt a mix of anger and embarrassment. "I'll be right there," I replied, feeling the eyes of my colleagues on me as I hurried out. At the station, Sarah was slouched in a chair, her arms crossed, an air of defiance about her. She looked up as I approached, her expression one of annoyance rather than remorse. "Sarah, what in the world were you thinking?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. She rolled her eyes, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Oh, relax, Linda. It's not like I killed someone. We just sprayed some paint. No big deal." I was aghast. "Not a big deal?" "Sarah, this is illegal. You could be in serious trouble." Sarah snorted, standing up. "Well, I'm not. Can we go now? This place is depressing." The car ride home was a tense silence. I knew this was a conversation for both Tom and me to handle, but with him away on a business trip, I felt overwhelmed and alone. That evening, with Danny asleep, I made a call to Tom. "Tom, we have a serious problem with Sarah," I said, my voice shaky. "I know, Linda, the school has called me a few times already." "What's happened now?" Tom sounded tired. "She was detained by the police today, Tom. For vandalism?" I explained, the severity of the situation hanging heavily in the air. There was a pause on the other end. "Jesus, Linda. I don't even know what to say." "We need to get her help, Tom. Therapy, counseling, something. She's out of control," I urged, feeling desperate. Tom sighed, the sound heavy and defeated. "Okay, I'll be back in 2 days. We'll sort this out." I hung up, feeling a small sense of relief, but mostly dread for what was to come. When Tom finally sat down with Sarah to discuss therapy, it was like igniting a fuse. "I'm not going to any shrink," Sarah spat, her eyes blazing. "You can't make me." Tom, trying to remain calm, countered, "It's not about making you, Sarah. It's about helping you. Sarah laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. Help me? Please? You just want to dump me on someone else, because you can't deal with me. Tom's patience was wearing thin. That's not true, Sarah, and you know it. We're worried about you. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Save it, Dad. I'm not your little project. I'm out of here. And with that, she stormed out, the door slamming shut behind her. The next thing we knew, she was at her grandparents', refusing to come home or even talk to us. Tom and I were left in a state of shock and helplessness. Our family felt like it was falling apart at the seams, and at the center of it all was Sarah, a teenage girl we just couldn't seem to reach no matter how hard we tried. Things hit rock bottom the day Sarah decided she'd had enough of our rules and bolted to her grandparents'. Tom and I were left in a state of shock and dismay, our family home feeling emptier than ever. Sitting in the living room, Tom kept glancing at his phone, the silence between us heavy and uncomfortable. I can't believe she'd just up and leave like that, he said, his voice a mix of frustration and disbelief. I exhaled deeply, feeling a storm of emotions brewing inside me. Tom, she's out of control. We can't just let her walk all over us. It's not right. Tom's expression was one of defeat. I know, Linda, I know. But what can we do? She's just not listening to us. Determined to get some answers, we decided to call Tom's parents. The conversation, however, quickly turned sour. Mom, this is Tom. We need to talk about Sarah, Tom began, trying to keep his voice level. His mom was quick to defend Sarah. Oh, Tom, she's just so distraught. She feels like Linda's pushing her away, trying to send her to a therapist like she's some sort of problem. I couldn't keep silent. That's not it at all. She's been getting into trouble, and we're worried about her. I snapped back, my patience wearing thin. Tom's dad jumped in, his voice bristling with irritation. Linda, you're just not understanding her. She's a delicate girl, and you've been too harsh. I felt my blood boil. Too harsh? She's been acting out, breaking laws. We're trying to do what's best for her. Well, she's staying here now. We'll handle it our way, Tom's mom retorted, her tone dismissive. Tom and I exchanged a look of frustration and helplessness. You're just going to let her skip school and hang out with God knows who? Tom challenged, his voice rising. She's just going through a phase. She'll settle down, his dad said nonchalantly, as if Sarah's behavior was no big deal. After the call, the sense of powerlessness was overwhelming. It was as if Sarah had everyone wrapped around her finger, and we were the villains for trying to impose some boundaries. In the following days, Sarah's absence cast a shadow over our home. Her room, untouched and gathering dust, was a constant reminder of the rift in our family. We sent money to Tom's parents for Sarah's expenses, but it felt like throwing money into a bottomless pit. There was no improvement, no change, just silent acceptance of her rebellion. One evening, as I tucked our son Danny into bed, his little face clouded with confusion. Mom, why did Sarah leave? Doesn't she like us anymore? I stroked his hair gently, fighting back my own emotions. Danny, it's complicated. Sarah's dealing with a lot right now. But we love her, and we're here for her whenever she's ready. Walking out of Danny's room, the weight of our family's situation hit me full force. We were a family torn apart, not by distance, but by defiance and misunderstanding. And at the heart of it all was Sarah, a girl I had hoped to embrace as my daughter, now a stranger living under another roof. For years, our house had been calm, almost too calm, without Sarah's tumultuous presence. Then, out of the blue, she showed up at our doorstep, her announcement as unexpected as her visit. Tom and I were in the kitchen when she walked in, a confident, almost brash look on her face. Hey, she said casually, as if she hadn't been away for years. Sarah, what are you doing here? Tom asked, surprise written all over his face. I've got news. I'm getting married, she declared, a smug smile playing on her lips. Tom and I exchanged glances, a mixture of shock and cautious optimism in our eyes. "That's great, Sarah. Congratulations," I managed to say, though a part of me remained wary. "Yeah, thanks. But here's the thing," Sarah continued, getting straight to the point. "I need money for the wedding." Tom's expression hardened slightly. "Money? Sarah, you haven't been home in years, and now you show up asking for money?" Sarah rolled her eyes. "Come on, Dad. It's not like you can't afford it. And it's not like I'm asking for much." I could feel the tension in the room escalating. "Sarah, it's not just about the money. You can't just walk back into our lives and expect us to." "Look, Linda," Sarah cut me off, her tone dismissive. "I'm not asking for your opinion. I'm asking Dad for a favor." The audacity of her request left me stunned. "Sarah, we're a family. We make these decisions together," I said firmly. Sarah scoffed. "Please, you're not my family. You're just the woman my dad married." Tom intervened, trying to keep the peace. "Sarah, that's enough. Linda's right. We're a family, and we make decisions together." She looked at Tom, her expression softening slightly. "Dad, please. It's my wedding. I just want it to be perfect." Tom sighed, running a hand through his hair. "We'll think about it, Sarah. But you can't just expect us to hand over the money without some discussion." Sarah's demeanor shifted then, as if realizing her approach wasn't working. I know. I'm sorry. I really want this to be special." After she left, Tom and I had a long talk. "Maybe this is a chance for us to mend things," I suggested, hopeful yet cautious. Tom nodded slowly. "Maybe. But we're not just writing her a blank check. We need to be involved in the planning, make sure the money is used appropriately." I agreed. Despite Sarah's brashness, this could be our opportunity to bridge the gap that had grown between us. Maybe, just maybe, we could turn a new page with her. But as I lay in bed that night, I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. Sarah's sudden return and request felt like just the calm before another storm. The days leading up to Sarah's wedding were a whirlwind of preparations. Tom and I decided to contribute generously to her wedding fund, hoping it would be a step towards mending our fractured relationship. But things took a shocking turn just a few days before the wedding. I decided to call the wedding planner to check on how the preparations were going. The conversation started off normal enough, but I could sense something was off. "Hi, this is Linda Johnson, Sarah's stepmom. I'm just calling to check on the wedding preparations," I said, trying to sound casual. The wedding planner's voice was tense, hesitant. "Oh, Mrs. Johnson, yes, the preparations are going well, but..." "But what?" I pressed, a knot forming in my stomach. There was a pause, and then she said, "I'm not sure how to say this, but Sarah, she's made some changes to the guest list." "Changes to the guest list? What kind of changes?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. The planner's voice was low, almost apologetic. "She's removed you, Mr. Johnson, and Danny from the list. But she's added her biological mother." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. Her mother? The one who left her? "Yes, and there's something else," the planner continued, her voice hesitant. "The budget for the wedding, it's significantly less than the amount you gave her." I was stunned into silence. Sarah had taken the money we gave her for the wedding and spent only a fraction of it, cutting us out of her big day in the process. After hanging up, I confronted Tom with the news. His reaction was one of disbelief and then growing anger. "That ungrateful little..." Tom started, his fists clenched. "Tom, calm down," I said, though I shared his outrage. "We need to talk to her about this." When we finally got Sarah on the phone, the conversation was anything but pleasant. "Sarah, why did you remove us from the wedding guest list?" Tom demanded, his voice tight with anger. Sarah's response was cold and matter-of-fact. Because I don't want your wife there. This is my day, and I'll have who I want. And what about the money? I asked, struggling to keep my composure. You spent only a fraction of what we gave you. That's none of your business, she snapped back. You gave me the money, it's mine to use how I see fit. We were at a loss for words. The audacity of her actions left us both reeling. Tom, in a rare display of fury, made a decision. We're taking back our money, Sarah. We won't support this deceit, he said, his voice resolute. You can't do that, Sarah yelled, her voice shrill with panic. We can, and we will, Tom replied firmly. You've crossed a line, Sarah. The call ended with Sarah hurling insults and accusations at us before hanging up. True to his word, Tom canceled the checks, effectively putting a stop to the wedding plans. We had tried to reach out, to mend bridges, but Sarah's actions had made it clear that some rifts were too deep to heal. The fallout from the cancelled wedding hit our family like a hurricane. Sarah's response to our decision was both explosive and bitter. She showed up at our house, her face twisted with rage, hurling accusations and insults. You've ruined everything, she screamed, her eyes blazing. This was supposed to be my day, and you destroyed it. Sarah, you lied to us, Tom countered, his voice firm despite the rising tension. You deceived us about the wedding, about the money. What did you expect? I expected you to back off and let me have my day, she retorted, her fists clenched at her sides. You excluded us from your wedding, Sarah. You took the money for yourself, I added, trying to reason with her. Because it's what I deserved. After years of putting up with you, Sarah spat out, her words cutting through the air. The argument escalated until Sarah, in a final burst of anger, stormed out of the house, swearing she'd never forgive us. In the aftermath, Tom and I were left to pick up the pieces. The situation worsened when we received a call from Tom's parents. They were furious, initially blaming us for the wedding debacle, but then, their anger took a different turn. Linda, Tom, we need to tell you something, Tom's mom said over the phone, her voice shaking. After Sarah left our house, we discovered she took some of my jewelry. Valuable pieces. Tom and I were stunned into silence. She stole from you? Tom finally managed to say, disbelief coloring his tone. Yes, his dad replied, the disappointment evident in his voice. We never thought she'd do something like this to us. Are you going to report it? I asked, a mix of concern and shock in my voice. No, we can't bring ourselves to do that to our granddaughter, but we're so hurt, Tom's mom said, her voice breaking. The revelation was a bitter pill to swallow. It was one thing for Sarah to lash out at us, but to betray her own grandparents in such a way was unthinkable. Days turned into weeks, and there was no word from Sarah. Tom held on to hope that she would come to her senses and reach out, but I wasn't so sure. Tom, do you really think she'll come back after all this? I asked one evening, as we sat in our quiet living room. Tom looked out the window, a far-off look in his eyes. I don't know, Linda. I hope she does. I hope she realizes the mistake she's made and wants to make amends. I sighed, feeling a deep sense of uncertainty. I don't know if she ever will, Tom. The Sarah we knew seems to be long gone. Tom nodded, his expression somber. Maybe you're right. But she's still my daughter. I can't give up hope. As time passed, the silence from Sarah became a new norm. We heard nothing about her whereabouts or well-being. Tom's parents, too, were left in the dark, their feelings of betrayal mingling with worry for their granddaughter. In our home, life went on. Danny grew older, and we focused our energy on him, ensuring he felt loved and secure. But the shadow of Sarah's actions lingered, a reminder of the broken bridges and unhealed wounds in our family. I often found myself wondering about Sarah, about where she was and what she was doing. My feelings were a complex mix of anger, disappointment, and a faint glimmer of concern. Tom remained hopeful, but deep down, I doubted if Sarah would ever return to us, if she would ever seek the help she so desperately needed. I'm Mary, 29, an accountant. I've always been the kind of person who thrives on order and predictability. But then, life threw me a curveball named Mike. We met at a mutual friend's birthday party. The moment I walked in, I spotted him across the room, laughing loudly, the center of attention. I was content to stay in the background, but my friend, Jess, had other ideas. "Mary, you've got to meet Mike. He's hilarious," Jess insisted, dragging me over to him. I remember thinking, this is going to be awkward, but to my surprise, it wasn't. Mike was easygoing, his laughter infectious. I found myself laughing more in that one evening than I had in months. "Hey, I'm Mike." "And you are?" he asked with a smile that reached his eyes. "Mary. Nice to meet you," I replied, a bit more enthusiastically than I intended. He cracked a joke about accountants being party animals in disguise, and I couldn't help but laugh. We spent the rest of the evening chatting. He was into graphic design, loved indie music, and had a passion for cooking. I remember leaving the party feeling lighter, happier. Mike had this way of making everything seem fun and exciting. Over the next few weeks, we saw a lot of each other. He'd show up at my apartment with takeout from the newest restaurant in town or tickets to a concert. "Life's too short for routines, Mary. Gotta mix it up," he'd say. I was drawn to his spontaneity, a stark contrast to my structured life. He had this knack for pulling me out of my comfort zone, and I loved it. But I started to notice little things. Like how he'd casually drop $100 on a night out without a second thought, or how he'd switch jobs because he got bored with the old one. I tried talking to him about it once. We were at my place, and I broached the subject as delicately as I could. "Mike, don't you think you should be a bit more careful with money? And maybe stick with a job longer?" He just laughed it off. "Mary, you worry too much. Life's about having fun. Money, jobs, they come and go." I wanted to argue, to explain that that's not how the world works, but I didn't. I let it slide, telling myself that it was just Mike being Mike. When he proposed, it was out of the blue. We were walking in the park, and he just blurted it out. "Marry me, Mary. Let's make this adventure official." It was impulsive, irrational, and completely Mike. And I said yes. We moved in together, into my house. It seemed like the perfect start to our life together. And I thought, maybe, just maybe, opposites could really attract and hold together. The days of laughter and impromptu adventures with Mike gradually gave way to a sobering reality. His carefree attitude, once the source of our connection, started to feel more like a growing divide. It was a Thursday evening when the first major crack appeared. I had stayed late at work to catch up on some demanding accounts. Tired and hungry, I arrived home, hoping for a quiet night. Instead, I walked into a scene that looked like the aftermath of a shopping spree. Bags from various stores were strewn across the living room, and there was Mike, lounging on the sofa with a self-satisfied grin. "Mary, you're home. Look at these deals I found today," he exclaimed, gesturing towards the bags. I dropped my keys on the table, feeling a knot tighten in my stomach. "Mike, we talked about this last week, about saving money and cutting down on unnecessary expenses." He shrugged, flipping through a magazine. "Yeah, but these were on sale. Besides, we needed some of these things." I picked up a receipt from one of the bags and felt my heart sink. "Needed? Mike, these are luxury items, not essentials. We have a budget for a reason." Mike looked up, his expression shifting from casual to defensive. "Come on, Mary, don't be such a killjoy. We deserve to treat ourselves once in a while." I sighed, trying to keep my voice calm. "It's not about being a killjoy, Mike. It's about being responsible. We have bills, a mortgage, and we agreed to save for a rainy day. He rolled his eyes and tossed the magazine aside. You always make a big deal out of everything. Can't you just relax for once? Then, one morning, I found an envelope addressed to Mike on the dining table. It was from his workplace. Curious, I opened it and felt my world tilt. Mike had resigned from his job without a word to me. When he finally came down for breakfast, I confronted him, the letter in my hand. Mike, what is this? You quit your job? Why didn't you discuss it with me first? He poured himself coffee, unfazed. Yeah, I quit. That job was a dead end, Mary. I need something better, something that excites me. But how are we going to manage our expenses? We need 2 incomes, Mike. You know this, I said, my voice rising with frustration. He shrugged, taking a sip of his coffee. We'll figure it out. We always do. You need to stop worrying so much. How can I not worry? We have financial commitments, Mike. This is not just about you or me, it's about us, our future, I argued, trying to make him see reason. Mike set down his cup with a thud. I can't deal with this right now, Mary. You're suffocating me with all this talk about money and responsibility. I watched in disbelief as he walked away, leaving me standing in the kitchen, letter in hand, feeling more alone than ever. Mike's unemployment, which initially seemed like a short-term hiccup, rapidly grew into a persistent source of stress and contention in our household. Each morning, as I prepared for work, I'd find Mike in the same spot on the couch, engrossed in either the TV or his phone. The sight became a painful reminder of our growing financial strain. Mike, it's been weeks since you quit your job. Have you started looking for something new? I asked one morning, trying to mask the concern in my voice as I adjusted my work badge. He barely glanced up from his phone. Yeah, I'm looking. Nothing's caught my eye yet. I'm waiting for the right opportunity. His nonchalant reply irked me. Right opportunity? We have bills piling up, Mike. We can't wait forever. He finally looked up, his expression a mix of annoyance and indifference. Mary, you need to chill. I know what I'm doing. I'll find something soon. Days turned into weeks, and the situation at home remained unchanged. I began to take on extra hours at work to keep up with our financial obligations, my exhaustion growing with each passing day. One evening, I came home to an unexpected scene. The living room was littered with pizza boxes and empty beer cans. Mike was sprawled on the couch, snoring lightly. The TV blared in the background. Mike, I called out, frustration evident in my tone. He stirred and blinked at me sleepily. What's up? He mumbled, rubbing his eyes. What's up? Look at this mess. And dinner? Were you planning to cook tonight? I asked, my patience wearing thin. He sat up, yawning. Oh, I forgot. Got caught up with the game. Grab something on your way home next time. I felt a surge of anger. I'm working extra hours to make ends meet, Mike. The least you could do is help around the house. He stood up, stretching lazily. I didn't ask you to work extra. You're choosing to stress yourself out. The conversation escalated quickly. Choosing to stress out? Mike, if I don't, how are we going to survive? You're sitting here doing nothing while I'm out there trying to keep us afloat. Mike's expression hardened. I'm not doing nothing. I'm trying to find a job. You think I like being stuck at home? Trying? By sitting on the couch all day? You're not even trying, Mike. This isn't what I signed up for when we got married. I shot back, my voice tinged with both anger and sadness. Mike scoffed. Well, sorry for not living up to your perfect standards, Mary. I didn't realize I married a nag. I was taken aback by his harsh words. A nag? Is it too much to ask for a partner who contributes? I don't understand how you can be so relaxed about our situation. He grabbed his jacket, heading towards the door. I need some air. I can't deal with this right now. The tension in our home had reached a boiling point. Every conversation with Mike about responsibility and our future ended in a heated argument, leaving a cold silence in its wake. I was tired, both physically from the extra hours at work and emotionally from the constant strain at home. One evening, as I sat at the kitchen table, sorting through bills and trying to make the numbers work, I realized something had to give. Mike, I began, my voice steady but firm, we need to talk. This can't go on any longer. He glanced up from his phone, his expression indifferent. What now, Mary? It's about your job situation. Or rather, the lack of one. It's been months, Mike. We're sinking here, and you don't seem to care, I said, the frustration evident in my tone. Mike let out a heavy sigh. Here we go again. Look, I'm trying, okay? You think I enjoy this? You think I like seeing you stressed all the time? Then do something about it. Find a job, any job. We need 2 incomes, Mike. We agreed on this when we got married. I shot back, my patience wearing thin. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. You think it's so easy, huh? Just snap my fingers and a job appears? You don't get it, Mary. The market's tough. I need something that suits me. Something that suits you? I repeated, incredulous. We don't have the luxury of waiting for the perfect job, Mike. We have bills, a mortgage, responsibilities. Mike paced the room, running his hands through his hair. I can't deal with this pressure, Mary. It's constant with you. Nag, nag, nag. I stood up, facing him. This is not about nagging, Mike. This is about our life, our future. If you can't understand that, then maybe this isn't going to work. Mike stopped pacing, his eyes meeting mine. What are you saying? I took a deep breath. I'm saying that if you don't find a job, if you don't start taking our situation seriously, then maybe we need to rethink this marriage. The words hung heavy in the air between us. Mike's face hardened, and for a moment, he said nothing. Then, without a word, he grabbed his jacket and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. I sat back down, my hands trembling slightly. I hadn't meant for it to come to this, but the endless cycle of arguments and indifference had worn me down. Days passed with no word from Mike. The silence was both a relief and a worry. Then, late one evening, my phone rang, jolting me out of my thoughts. It was the hospital. Mrs. Smith? Your husband, Mike Smith, was brought in after an accident. He's stable, but he sustained some injuries. The news hit me like a punch to the stomach. I rushed to the hospital, my mind racing with worry and 1,000 unanswered questions. The sterile, impersonal atmosphere of the hospital was a sharp contrast to the emotional turmoil I was feeling. Sitting beside Mike's hospital bed, I watched him, his leg in a bulky cast, his face reflecting pain and vulnerability. It was a side of Mike I hadn't seen before, and it stirred a complex mix of emotions within me. As Mike's eyes fluttered open, he squinted at me, confusion giving way to realization. Mary? You're here. His voice was weak, laden with a mix of guilt and relief. I forced a smile, trying to keep the conversation light. Yeah, I'm here. How are you feeling? He winced as he tried to adjust his position. Like I'd been run over. Which, I guess, isn't far from the truth. What did the doctors say? They said you were lucky. The injury could have been worse. It's a severe fracture, and you'll need time to heal, I explained, watching his face for a reaction. Mike exhaled deeply, his eyes meeting mine. Mary, I'm sorry. I've been such a fool, and now this, his voice trailed off. I sighed, feeling a wave of conflicting feelings. "Mike, we can sort through all that later. Right now, you need to focus on getting better." But he persisted, a hint of urgency in his tone. "No, I need to say this. I've been self-centered, and I've put you through so much. This accident, it's made me see things differently." I listened, unsure of how to respond. "I appreciate you saying that, Mike. But it's going to take more than words to fix what's been broken." He nodded solemnly. "I know, and I want to make it right. I'll find a job as soon as I'm able. I'll help out more around the house, whatever it takes." The conversation was briefly interrupted by the nurse who came in to check on Mike's vitals. After she left, we resumed our talk. "Mike, it's not just about the job or the housework. It's about us, our relationship. We've been drifting apart, and it's going to take effort to bridge that gap," I said, my voice steady but filled with emotion. He reached out, taking my hand. "I know I've messed up, Mary. But this accident, lying here, all I could think about was you. How much you mean to me, and how I've taken you for granted." I felt a lump in my throat. His words were touching, yet I was cautious. "I want to believe you, Mike. I really do. But we've had so many false starts. I need to see that you're serious about this change." The nurse returned, her cheerful demeanor a stark contrast to the heavy mood. "We're going to start some mild physiotherapy soon. It'll be a journey, but you're in good hands." After she left, Mike looked at me, a newfound resolve in his eyes. "I know it's going to be a long road, but I want you with me, Mary. If you're willing to give me that chance." Bringing Mike home from the hospital marked the beginning of a new, challenging chapter in our lives. His broken leg meant he was confined to the bed or the couch, and his dependence on me for the simplest of tasks was a stark change from his previous self-reliance. The first few days were a flurry of adjusting to the new routine. I juggled my work commitments with playing nurse to Mike. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, I came home to find Mike glaring at the TV, a frown etched on his face. "Mike, how are you feeling? Do you need anything?" I asked, dropping my bag and kicking off my shoes. He turned his head, his expression sour. "Where have you been? I've been calling out for help to get to the bathroom, and you were nowhere." I felt a twinge of guilt mixed with frustration. "I had to stay late at work, Mike. You know my job is demanding. I can't just leave whenever I want." He scoffed. "Well, maybe your job shouldn't be more important than your husband." As the days went on, Mike's demands grew. He wanted specific meals at specific times, his medication handed to him on the dot, and constant attention. If something wasn't to his liking, he made sure to voice his displeasure. One Saturday, I spent hours preparing his favorite dish, hoping it would lift his spirits. As I set the plate down in front of him, he looked at it and then up at me with disdain. "This is what you made? It's too salty. Can't you do anything right?" I felt my patience snap. "Mike, I've been running around all day, trying to take care of you and keep up with everything else. A little appreciation wouldn't hurt." He sneered, pushing the plate away. "Appreciation? For this? I'm stuck in this bed because of my leg, and all I ask is for a decent meal." I stood up, my hands trembling with anger. "You know what, Mike? I'm not your servant. I'm your wife, and I deserve some respect." Mike's eyes flashed with anger. "Respect? You want respect? How about respecting my condition? I'm the one who's suffering here." As I walked away to cool down, I realized that the man I was trying to help was becoming increasingly unrecognizable. The sweet, apologetic person I had seen in the hospital had vanished, replaced by someone who seemed to take pleasure in belittling me at every turn. That fateful day, I returned home from work earlier than usual. The house, usually quiet during these hours, echoed with an unfamiliar sound of laughter coming from Mike's room. My heart pounding, I tiptoed closer, a sense of dread growing with each step. Peering through the slightly open door, I saw Mike, animated and cheerful, chatting on the phone. "Oh yeah, I've settled in quite well here," he said with a laugh. Mary doesn't have a clue. My breath caught in my throat. Who was he talking to? What was he talking about? A cold shiver ran down my spine as I processed his words. I backed away, my mind racing, then loudly re-entered the house, slamming the door to announce my presence. I composed myself and walked into his room. Mike, hearing the door slam, quickly changed his demeanor and ended the call. "Mary, you're back," he said, feigning weakness. "Hey, how are you feeling?" I asked, masking my turmoil with a concerned smile. "Just the same, you know," he replied, avoiding my gaze. The next day, I contacted a private detective, someone I knew from a previous work case. "I need you to find out everything about my husband's activities," I told him over the phone. "And there's a woman he might be involved with." While the detective did his work, I played the part of the dutiful wife. It was agonizing, acting as if everything was normal when every instinct screamed that my world was falling apart. 2 weeks later, the detective got back to me. The news was worse than I had imagined. Mike had been in an accident with his mistress, who was listed in the police reports. The detective provided me with her name, and a quick search on social media revealed her profile, filled with pictures of her and Mike looking intimately close. But there was more. The detective had uncovered Mike's gambling debts, a staggering amount that threatened to drown us financially. I sat in the living room, the evidence of Mike's betrayal laid out before me, feeling a mix of anger, disbelief, and heartache. How best to unveil his deceit? How to make him realize the gravity of his betrayal? For now, I kept these thoughts to myself, waiting for the right moment to turn the tables. The morning light filtered through the curtains as I steeled myself for the confrontation ahead. Entering Mike's room, where he lay with his broken leg, I braced myself for the performance of a lifetime. "Mike, I need to talk to you about something important," I said, my voice calm but firm. He looked up, irritation flashing across his face. "What now, Mary? Can't you see I'm in pain here?" I maintained my composure. "I've made a decision for your better care. You're being moved to a state medical facility tomorrow. They're equipped to handle your rehabilitation more effectively." Mike's expression turned from annoyance to panic. "What? No, you can't do that. I want to stay here, with you." "I'm sorry, Mike, but this is for the best. I'll start packing your things," I said, turning towards the door. As I closed it behind me, I heard the frantic rustling of sheets and Mike's hurried voice calling someone on the phone. "She's sending me to some facility. You have to help me." About an hour later, a car pulled up outside. Mike's mistress barged into our house, her face a mask of determination and concern. She marched directly to Mike's room, with me trailing behind. "I'm here to take him with me. He's not going to any facility," she declared, her voice laced with a sense of ownership. I followed her into the room, my heart pounding but my face calm. "I'm glad you're here. This was all a setup to get you to show your hand." Mike and his mistress exchanged a look of confusion and fear. "What are you talking about, Mary?" Mike asked, his voice quivering. I held up the evidence collected by the detective, photos of them together. "This is the proof of your affair. I'll be seeking compensation for this betrayal." The mistress laughed, though her eyes betrayed her nervousness. "I can pay whatever you want. He's coming with me." My smile was thin, but confident. "You should know, he's neck-deep in gambling debts, and without a job, he can't afford his medical bills or insurance. Are you ready to handle all that?" Her face went pale, the implications of what I'd said slowly sinking in. Mike's eyes darted between us, a look of utter helplessness on his face. "But I can't deal with all that," she stammered, her confidence crumbling. "Seems like he's your problem now," I said with a cold finality, turning to leave the room. The following weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings. I filed for divorce, ensuring I received a fair settlement for Mike's betrayal and deceit. His mistress, now burdened with his financial and medical responsibilities, quickly found herself overwhelmed. Rumors reached me over time about their strained relationship, riddled with arguments and financial woes. Mike's downfall was a tale of his own making, and his mistress was now ensnared in the web of consequences. As for me, I found solace in my newfound freedom and independence. The betrayal had been painful, a stark lesson in trust and deception. Yet, it also imparted a strength I never knew I had. I moved forward with my life, emboldened by my resilience and determined to find happiness on my own terms, free from the shadows of deceit and betrayal.